Hey guys, tonight we're going to travel back to a time when the daily grind wasn't just a metaphor for a tough day at the office. It was a literal, bone-wearying, soul-crushing reality. Imagine a world without safety regulations, without paid time off, and where the most advanced piece of workplace technology is a sharpened bit of iron strapped to a piece of wood. We're peeling back the romantic veneer of castles and knights to look at the lives of the people who did the actual work. The jobs so brutal, so demanding, and so utterly unpleasant that, let's be honest, you probably wouldn't survive the first week. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. I always love to see where you're all tuning in from, so drop your city and local time in the comments below. It's amazing to see this little community stretch all across the globe. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The first thing you notice isn't a sound, but a feeling. It's the cold, a damp and persistent chill that seems to seep up from the very earth beneath you. You're lying on a straw-stuffed pallet on the floor of a one-room hut. There's no alarm clock, no gentle nudge from a partner. Your rooster, who honestly has a much better life than you do, is the only timekeeper you need, and he hasn't even cleared his throat yet. Your real alarm is the sliver of pre-dawn grey filtering through a crack in the wattle and daub wall. It's the signal. The day has begun, whether your aching back agrees or not. You sit up, the rough wool of your tunic scratching against your skin. It's the only set of clothes you own, and it smells faintly of wood smoke, sweat, and yesterday's rain. The air inside the hut is thick with the scent of slumbering bodies. Your family is huddled together for warmth on the other side of the small packed earth floor. In the corner, a goat shifts, its soft bleat a familiar part of your morning routine. At least it provides milk. You're a serf and your world is small, defined by the rise and fall of the sun and the borders of your lord's manor. You don't own this land. You don't even really own yourself. You are, in the legal Latin of the time, adscriptus glebe, bound to the soil. You're a feature of the landscape, as permanent and as unfree as the trees that line the fields. Your family has worked this same patch of earth for generations, and your children will too. Leaving isn't an option. It's a crime called apostasy, and if you were caught, you'd be branded and dragged back to face the Lord's justice. Breakfast is a hunk of dark, heavy bread, dense and chewy. You dip it into a mug of what's called small ale, a weak low-alcohol beer that's safer to drink than the local water. It's calories, and you'll need every single one. You pull on your worn leather shoes, a luxury not all your neighbours can afford, and step out into the misty dawn. The village is stirring, a collection of a dozen or so identical huts huddled around a small stony church. Your first duty of the day is not for your own benefit. You head not to the small strip of land you're allowed to farm for your family, but to the Lord's personal fields, the domain. This is the heart of your servitude, the corvée labour, the days of unpaid work you owe your master in, exchange for his protection and the right to exist on his land. Today, it's ploughing. The heavy plough, a monstrous contraption of wood and iron, waits at the edge of the field. It takes a team of 8 oxen to pull it, and at least 2 men to guide it. You're the one at the handles wrestling the ploughshare through the thick, wet soil. The work is brutal. Your shoulders and back scream with the effort of keeping the furrow straight. A crooked line was considered bad luck, a potential omen for a poor harvest, so the pressure is immense. The oxen are powerful but stubborn, and the air is filled with your shouts of encouragement and frustration. This isn't the neat, tidy farming you see in pictures. It's a muddy, messy, full-body struggle against the earth itself. All morning you toil, your world shrinking to the heaving flanks of the animals in front of you and the endless stretch of unbroken ground. There are no coffee breaks, no chats by the water cooler. There is only the rhythm of the work, heave, step, guide, repeat. It's a full-body workout that would make a modern personal trainer weep. Sometime around noon, you're granted a brief stop. You sit on the damp earth, pulling another piece of bread from your pouch, maybe with a raw onion or a sliver of hard cheese. You watch the Lord's steward, or reeve, observing from a distance. He's there to make sure you're not slacking, that the Lord is getting every ounce of labour he's owed. This is a system built on obligation, not ambition. Historians still argue whether the relationship between lord and serf was purely exploitative, or if it contained elements of mutual, albeit deeply unequal, obligation. From where you're sitting, with mud caking your legs and your stomach rumbling, it feels pretty one-sided. The afternoon brings a change of pace, but not of intensity. Once the ploughing is done, there are fences to mend, ditches to clear, and firewood to haul for the Great Hall. You're a living multi-tool, expected to be a farmer, a lumberjack, and a construction worker all in one day. The Lord's needs are endless. His stone manor, visible on the hill, is a constant looming reminder of the gulf between his world and yours. While you mend his fences, he might be hunting in his private forest, a forest where you'd be flogged or worse for catching a single rabbit to feed your family. As the sun begins its slow descent, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple you're too tired to appreciate, you're finally released. You trudge back to your own small strips in the common field. The three-field system, a major agricultural innovation, means one field is fallow, one has wheat, and the other has beans or peas. It's a clever way to manage soil fertility, but for you, it just means more work. You have only a precious hour or two of remaining light to tend to your own crops, the food that will hopefully see your family through the winter. Exhaustion is a constant companion, a dull ache that settles deep in your bones. You finally stumble back into your hut as true darkness falls. The family gathers around the small smoky hearth. The evening meal is a simple vegetable pottage, bubbling away in a single pot. It's hot and filling, and for a few moments there is a sense of peace. Your children, who spent their day scaring crows from the fields or gathering berries, are already half asleep by the fire. You spend a few minutes sharpening a tool or patching a shoe by the flickering light, your hands moving with practiced familiarity. Soon the fire dies down to embers, and the hut is plunged into a profound darkness. You lie down on your straw pallet, every muscle protesting. You don't dream of a better life. You don't have the energy for such fantasies. Your only thought is that you survive today, and that tomorrow, and the day after, and every day until you are too old or broken to work, you will do it all over again. You fall asleep in that serf's hut, a deep and dreamless slumber born of pure physical exhaustion. But let's imagine, just for a moment, that you found a way out. Perhaps your lord died without an heir, or you managed a daring escape to the nearest town, staying hidden for a year and a day to earn your freedom. You've traded the endless green fields for the cramped, winding streets of a bustling city like London or York. You've escaped the mud, but you found yourself sinking into something infinitely worse. Because freedom, you learn quickly, doesn't pay for bread, and the only job you, a newcomer with no guild and no skills, can get is one that nobody else wants. It's a job that happens while the rest of the city sleeps, a job performed in near total darkness. You've become a gong-farmer. The name sounds almost respectable, doesn't it? Like you're cultivating some exotic crop. The reality is less agricultural. The word gong comes from an Old English term for a privy or cesspit. You are, to put it plainly, a toilet cleaner, and not the modern kind with porcelain and running water. You're the one who empties the pits of human waste that fester beneath the city's homes and public latrines. Your work begins long after the curfew bell has rung, its solemn tone echoing through the now empty streets. Honest folk are behind shuttered windows, doors bolted. The only people out now are the night watch, stray dogs, and you. You gather your state-of-the-art equipment, which consists of a few rickety buckets, a shovel, a long-handled ladle, and a profound sense of regret. You lead a small cart pulled by an equally miserable-looking horse through the labyrinthine alleys, the wooden wheels groaning over the cobblestones. The city at night is a different beast. The familiar landmarks are swallowed by shadow, and every corner seems to hide a threat. But the biggest threat is the one you're actively seeking out. Your first stop is the back of a wealthy merchant's house. The household's privy is a small stone outbuilding, and beneath its wooden seat is a pit maybe 10 feet deep. It hasn't been emptied in over a year. Your partner, a grim-faced man who communicates only in grunts, helps you pry off the heavy cover. And then it hits you. It's a physical force, an invisible wall of stench that makes your eyes water and your stomach churn. This isn't just a bad smell. It's a primordial odour of decay and digestion, a fragrance that doesn't just enter your nostrils. It moves in, redecorates, and refuses to pay rent. You've learned to breathe through your mouth, to numb your senses as best you can, but it never truly goes away. You carry the smell in your clothes, in your hair, in your very skin. One of you has to go down into the pit. Tonight, It's your turn. Your partner lowers a small, unstable ladder, and you descend into the filth. The air is thick and warm, and the fumes are the real danger. These pits are pockets of what we now know as methane and hydrogen sulfide. Get a lungful of the bad air, and you don't just pass out, you die. It's a documented hazard of the job, a quiet and lonely death at the bottom of a hole filled with everyone else's problems. You work quickly, the thick, semi-liquid sludge making every movement a struggle. You fill the buckets, your arms screaming with the effort, and your partner hauls them up one by one to be dumped into your cart. This particular job is what the law calls scouring the gong. It's a full-on excavation. You're not just skimming the top, you're scraping the stone walls, ensuring the pit is as clean as it can be until it inevitably fills again. The work is claustrophobic, disgusting, and utterly humiliating. Above, you can hear the faint sounds of the city sleeping, oblivious to the subterranean horror you're enduring for their sanitation. Once the pit is empty, you haul your stinking cargo through the sleeping city. The job is legally required to be done at night, specifically between 9 PM and 5 AM, for a very obvious reason. Nobody wants to see or smell you at work. You are a walking, talking, cart-pulling violation of every social decency. People who see you will cross the street. Mothers will pull their children away. You're an essential part of the city's health, yet you're treated like an outcast. Historians still argue whether gong-farmers were regarded as a necessary, if unpleasant, public service, or if they were relegated to a social status akin to untouchables. Given the way people spit when you pass, you have a pretty good idea of the answer. You must transport the night soil, as it's euphemistically called, to a designated collection point. In a city like London, there were specific lay stalls or dung wharves along the Thames. You're legally obligated to dump your cart's contents only in these official spots, and only at certain times. A quirky and specific city ordinance stated you couldn't just dump it anywhere in the river. It had to be taken out to the middle of the stream at high tide to ensure it was carried out to sea. Dumping it near the riverbank could result in a hefty fine, which you absolutely cannot afford. The pay, surprisingly, is one of the few upsides. Because the work is so foul and so dangerous, a gong farmer could earn a decent wage compared to an unskilled labourer. You might make several pence a day, enough to afford your rent and food, with maybe a little left over. It's the original form of hazard pay. But the money comes at a cost that isn't measured in coin. The social stigma is immense. You're often forced to live in a specific area of the city, away from respectable folk. Your chances of marrying well, or at all, are slim. And your life expectancy, well, let's just say you don't see many old gong farmers. As the first hints of dawn streak the sky, you guide your empty cart back home, the stench still clinging to you like a second skin. You strip off your work clothes outside your small rented room, washing as best you can with a bucket of cold water that does little to remove the phantom smell. You collapse into your bed just as the world is waking up, your day's work done. You didn't face the Lord's reeve or the back-breaking toil of the fields. Instead, you confronted the literal underbelly of society, a darkness far more profound than the rural night. And as you drift off to sleep, you know that tonight, when the curfew bell rings again, you will have to get up and do it all over again. The city smells are one thing, but you've managed to find an occupation that gets you out of the crowded, reeking alleys of London. You've found a job that takes you into nature, into the quiet, misty wetlands beyond the town walls. It sounds almost idyllic, a peaceful escape from the human chaos. But you soon learn that nature has its own special brands of unpleasantness. You've become a leech collector, and your primary tool for this trade is your own body. You wake before dawn, not to the sound of a rooster, but to the familiar ache in your legs. It's a dull throb, a constant reminder of yesterday's work. You don't wear much, just a simple tunic hitched up high. Armour would be pointless, and even proper trousers would just get soaked and heavy. Your protection is a thick layer of mud you'll apply later. For now, you grab your collecting tin, a small wooden box with a perforated lid, and head out towards the fens and marshes. The landscape is beautiful in a desolate sort of way. Mist hangs low over the reed-choked pools of stagnant water. The air is cool and smells of damp earth, decaying leaves, and the subtle, metallic scent of bog iron. It's a quiet world, punctuated by the cry of a water bird or the buzz of insects. This is your office. Your clients are the town's barber surgeons, the local monastery with its infirmary, and any wealthy household that can afford medical care. In an era where the theory of the four humours, blood, phlegm, yellow bile and black bile, reigns supreme, medicine is all about balance. If someone has a fever, a headache, or pretty much any ailment, the go-to diagnosis is an excess of blood. The prescribed cure, bloodletting. And the most popular, gentlest way to do that is with leeches. This makes Hirudo medicinalis, the medicinal leech, a highly valuable commodity. But you can't just buy them wholesale. Someone has to go out and get them. That someone is you. You find a promising-looking pond, its surface slick with algae, and you take a deep breath. This is the part that never gets easier. You wade in. The water is shockingly cold at first, a jolt that travels up your spine. It quickly turns tepid and murky as you move further in, the bottom a soft sinking ooze that sucks at your bare feet. You stand there, in water up to your knees, and you wait. This is the entire technique. You are the bait. You are a walking, talking human lure. You splash a little, disturbing the water to announce your presence. Then, stillness. You feel the first one before you see it. A faint tickling sensation on your ankle. You look down and there it is, a small, dark, ribbon-like creature, undulating as it searches for the perfect spot. It attaches itself with its suckers, and you feel a tiny, sharp prick. Not exactly painful, more of a mild annoyance. The leech's saliva contains a powerful anaesthetic, so you barely feel the bite. More importantly, it contains an anticoagulant called hirudin, which keeps the blood flowing freely. This is what makes them so medically valuable, and it's what makes your job so draining. One by one, they come. More tickles, more tiny pricks on your shins, your calves, the backs of your knees. You watch as they latch on, their bodies swelling and elongating as they fill with your blood. You have to be patient. You can't just pull them off as soon as they attach. You have to let them get their fill, but not so much that they drop off on their own and get lost in the murky water. It's a delicate balance. When a leech is fat and engorged, you carefully detach it, dropping it into your tin. Some leech collectors, especially those who are old or frail, would use animals like horses to lure the leeches, but that was an expensive investment. Your own two legs are free. The job is surprisingly solitary, giving you a lot of time to think. You think about the irony of it all. You're sacrificing your own blood, your own humoral balance, so that a wealthy merchant with a headache can feel better. You are, in a very real sense, selling your life force one wriggling parasite at a time. The fringe tidbit about this job is the folklore that surrounded it. Leech collectors, particularly women, were often seen as being adjacent to witchcraft. They spent their time in lonely, wild places, dealt with blood and strange creatures, and had knowledge of the natural world that seemed mysterious to townfolk. Being a leech collector meant walking a fine line between being a provider of medicine and being an object of suspicion. After a few hours, your legs are covered in them. You've collected a few dozen, and you're starting to feel lightheaded. This is the main occupational hazard, chronic blood loss. You wade out of the water, your legs a gruesome sight, crisscrossed with trickles of blood from the bites. The hirudin in the leech's saliva means the wounds won't clot for hours. You'll bleed slowly but steadily for the rest of the day. You smear your legs with the cool mud from the bank, which helps to slow the bleeding and soothe the irritation. You trudge back to town, feeling weak and tired, your precious, blood-filled cargo sloshing gently in its tin. You sell your haul to the barber surgeon, who inspects the leeches with a professional eye before paying you. He keeps them in a large glass jar, and you can't help but feel a strange connection to the bloated creatures floating within. That's your blood in there. The job has long-term consequences. Constant blood loss leads to anemia, weakness, and a pale complexion. Infections are also a constant risk. The stagnant water you wade in is a soup of bacteria, and your legs are covered in open wounds. A small infection could easily turn into a raging fever, and in a world without antibiotics, that could be a death sentence. Historians still argue about the social standing of leech collectors. Were they seen as quasi-medical professionals, or were they at the bottom of the social ladder with the gong-farmers and rat-catchers? The answer likely varied by region, but it was never a high-status profession. You spend the afternoon resting, trying to regain your strength. You eat what you can afford, usually iron-rich foods like dark bread and, if you're lucky, a bit of organ meat, to try and replenish what you've lost. As you lie on your pallet, the familiar ache in your legs returns, accompanied by the maddening itch of dozens of healing bites. You look at your scarred, pale limbs and wonder how many more years you can do this. The demand for leeches is constant, a testament to the unwavering faith in bloodletting, and as long as there is sickness, there will be a need for people like you, willing to wade into the darkest waters and pay a bloody price for a handful of coins. You've had enough of selling your own blood. The lightheadedness and constant itching have driven you back to the bustling town, but this time you're determined to find a trade with a roof over your head. You find work in the textile industry, a cornerstone of the medieval economy. You're not weaving fine tapestries or embroidering silks for a lady. You're at the very beginning of the process, in a workshop filled with a smell so pungent it makes the gong-farmers' cart seem like a field of wildflowers. You've become a fuller, and your job is to clean and thicken newly woven wool. The key ingredient in this process? Stale urine. The workshop is a large open-air space, though it's covered by a simple roof. The floor is dominated by a series of large, shallow vats, usually made of stone or wood. These vats are your workstation. They are filled with a disgusting cocktail: water, a type of clay called fuller's earth, and gallons upon gallons of aged human urine. The ammonia in the urine is a powerful cleansing agent and degreaser, perfect for stripping the natural lanolin and dirt from raw wool. It was collected in pots left on street corners for people to contribute to. It was the medieval world's most unfortunate recycling program. Your day begins by taking huge bolts of newly woven woolen cloth and shoving them into one of these vats. The cloth is rough, greasy, and stiff. Your job is to transform it into the soft, dense fabric favoured for clothing, and you do this with your feet. You hitch up your tunic, climb into the vat, and you begin to stomp. For hours on end you tread the cloth, marching in place, stomping and kicking, your bare feet sloshing in the foul-smelling liquid. This isn't a gentle process. It's hard, physical labour. The goal is twofold. First, the stomping action, combined with the ammonia and the abrasive fuller's earth, cleans the wool. Second, the constant pounding mats the wool fibres together, shrinking and thickening the cloth in a process called felting. This is what gives the finished product its durability and warmth. It's essentially a very gross, very manual version of the agitation cycle in a washing machine. The air in the fuller's workshop is thick with the sharp, acrid stench of ammonia. It burns your nostrils and makes your eyes water. You've been doing this long enough that you barely notice it anymore, much like the gong farmer gets used to his particular occupational hazard. But your hands and feet tell a different story. They are perpetually raw and chapped from the caustic solution. The skin is cracked and sore, and small cuts are a constant misery, stinging fiercely in the alkaline mixture. You work in a team, often with 2 or 3 other fullers in the same vat, stomping in unison to a rhythm, perhaps even singing a work song to pass the monotonous hours. It creates a strange sense of camaraderie, a bond forged in shared misery and urine. You're all in the same foul-smelling boat, or rather vat. Sometimes you talk, shouting over the rhythmic sloshing. You joke about whose contribution to the urine pot on the corner was the most potent last night. It's gallows humour, but it's what gets you through the day. This job is a perfect example of how the medieval world used readily available, if unpleasant, materials. One of the more quirky historical facts is that some fulling operations were so large that they had contracts with local institutions, like monasteries or guild halls, to ensure a steady supply of their primary cleaning agent. Imagine that negotiation. Around the 12th century, a technological innovation began to change your profession: the fulling mill. This was a water-powered machine with large wooden hammers that would pound the cloth automatically. It was far more efficient than you and your stomping friends. The rise of the fulling mill is a major fact in medieval economic history. It was one of the first instances of industrial mechanization replacing manual labour. Where these mills were built, your job became obsolete. But in many towns, especially smaller ones, the traditional method of walking the cloth persisted for centuries. For now, your feet are the most advanced technology available. After hours of stomping, the cloth is finally ready. You and your team heave the incredibly heavy, sodden bolt of wool out of the vat. Your part of the job is done. The cloth will then be stretched out on a large frame called a tenter, where it's held by hooks. This is where the phrase "on tenterhooks" comes from, meaning to be in a state of suspense. It will dry in the sun, bleaching and freshening, before being passed on to dyers and tailors. You spend a few minutes trying to wash the filth off your feet and legs with cleaner water, but it's a losing battle. The smell clings to you. You're known in the street by your scent. You head home, your legs aching with a deep pulsating pain from the hours of repetitive motion. You earn a steady wage, better than a simple farmhand, because cloth production is a vital trade. But like so many medieval jobs, it takes a severe toll on your body. Historians still argue about the health effects of long-term exposure to the chemicals involved in fulling. While the ammonia from urine was the most obvious, the fuller's earth clay contained fine particles of silica. Inhaling this dust day after day could have led to silicosis, a lung disease similar to what quarrymen suffered from. So you were getting it from both ends: chemical burns on your skin and toxic dust in your lungs. You sit down to your meagre evening meal, trying to ignore the raw, burning sensation in your feet. You look at a woolen blanket in the corner of your room, and you feel a strange mix of pride and revulsion. You know the immense, disgusting effort that went into making it soft and warm. It's a small comfort. Tomorrow the vats will be waiting. More cloth, more dirt, and another fresh delivery for the urine pot on the corner. You are a crucial cog in the engine of commerce, but you are a cog that is constantly being steeped in the worst filth the town has to offer. You've decided that working with urine, while unpleasant, is at least one step removed from the animal. You want a more robust trade, a craft. You find an apprenticeship in a part of town that everyone else avoids, an area downwind from the residential quarters, usually near the river. The air here is thick with a smell that makes the fuller's workshop seem pleasant by comparison. It's a complex, horrifying bouquet of rot, chemicals and decaying flesh. You've become an apprentice tanner, and your new life is a constant hands-on lesson in the art of controlled decomposition. Your master's tannery is a collection of sheds and pits, all stained and reeking. The ground is a perpetual muddy mess, saturated with water, blood, and things you don't want to identify. Your first task of the day is to receive a new delivery from the local butcher. It's a cart full of fresh animal hides: cow, sheep, goat. They are stiff with dried blood and fat, and crawling with flies. This is your raw material. Leather is an essential product, used for everything from shoes and belts to armour and saddles. But turning a hairy, rotting animal skin into a durable, flexible material is a long and stomach-turning process. The first step is fleshing. You drape a heavy, wet hide over a curved wooden beam. Using a long two-handled knife with a dull, convex edge, you begin to scrape. Your job is to remove every last scrap of fat, muscle and flesh from the underside of the skin. It's slimy, slippery work. The hide is heavy, and you have to put your whole body into it, pushing and scraping for hours. Your arms ache, your back screams, and you are splattered from head to toe in gore. Once the hide is fleshed, it goes into a pit for dehairing. This is where the smell really kicks into high gear. The hides are soaked in a solution that loosens the hair. One common method is to use a lime bath, a caustic mixture of slaked lime and water. You have to submerge and turn the heavy hides in this pit using long poles. The lime burns your skin on contact, and the fumes are choking. An even cheaper, and therefore more common method, was to simply let the hides putrefy. They were piled into a pit and left to sweat and rot for several days until the hair follicles decomposed enough for the hair to be scraped off easily. This process, called sweating, created a stench of such epic proportions that tanneries were legally required to be located outside town walls in many places. After the hair is gone, the hide is, well, it's not exactly pleasant. It's a pale, flabby, swollen thing. Now comes the most infamous part of your job: baiting. The lime bath has made the hide alkaline and stiff. To make it soft and receptive to the tanning agents, you need to neutralise it and remove the remaining proteins. The preferred substance for this? A soupy mixture of water and animal dung. Dog or pigeon droppings were considered the best, as they contained enzymes that did the job perfectly. You take the hides from the lime pit and submerge them in this new, even more disgusting bath, kneading them with your hands or feet to ensure the solution penetrates fully. Yes, you are literally massaging animal skins in a bath of excrement. Remember the fuller stomping in urine? You've just found a way to one-up him in the gross-out Olympics. Having survived that ordeal, the hide is finally ready for the actual tanning. This is the process that gives leather its name and its durability. The hides are moved to yet another set of pits, these filled with a solution of tannin. Tannin is a naturally occurring compound found in the bark of certain trees, most commonly oak. You spend your days layering the pale, prepped hides with shredded oak bark and then filling the pit with water. This is a slow, patient process. The hides will sit in this tannin liquor for months, sometimes over a year for thick leather, being moved to progressively stronger solutions. Your job is to manage these pits, which is less disgusting but still hard physical work. A much faster, though lower quality method of tanning was called touring, which used alum and salt. But the most bizarre and intriguing method was brain tanning. A well-known tidbit among tanners and historians is the old saying, "Every animal has enough brains to tan its own hide." And it's true. The emulsified fats in brain matter are a highly effective tanning agent. Part of your job could involve mashing up animal brains, often the very brains from the animals the hides came from, and rubbing the greasy paste-like substance into the hide. It's an almost ritualistic, strangely efficient form of recycling that feels both primitive and ingenious. As an apprentice, you do all the dirtiest work. You are perpetually damp, cold, and smelly. The cocktail of chemicals, lime, dung, and tannin, is brutal on your skin. Tanners' hands were famously stained, cracked, and often ulcerated. There was also the constant risk of anthrax, a deadly bacterial infection that could be contracted from the hides of infected animals. A small cut on your hand could be a death sentence. Historians still debate the precise social status of tanners. They were vital craftsmen and could become quite wealthy, as leather was always in demand. Yet their work was so foul-smelling and associated with death and decay that they were often socially ostracised, forced to live and work in the most undesirable parts of town. A master tanner might be respected for his wealth and skill, but he probably wasn't getting invited to many dinner parties. At the end of the day, you wash as best you can in the river, the same river your tannery pollutes with its runoff. The smell never really leaves you. It's in your clothes, your hair, your home. You walk through the town and people give you a wide berth. You're the source of the stink that plagues the city's edge. But as you look at the finished hides, now a rich brown, strong and supple, you feel a sense of accomplishment. You've taken something foul and rotten and, through a series of frankly horrifying steps, transformed it into something useful and valuable. You've mastered a craft that is part chemistry, part butchery, and all brutal hard work. You've had your fill of the city's specialised stenches. The memory of the tannery, the fuller's vat, and the gong-farmer's cart has convinced you that a life of honest, hard labour in the clean country air is what you truly crave. You've found work far from any town, in the rugged hills where the earth itself is being reshaped. You are a quarryman, and your job is to tear stone from the heart of the world. The air here is indeed cleaner, free from the miasma of urban life, but it's not fresh. It's thick with a fine, white dust that coats everything. The trees, the grass, your tunic, the inside of your mouth. It hangs in the air, sparkling in the sun, a beautiful and deadly haze. This dust is your constant companion, a far more insidious threat than the honest filth of the city. Your day begins with the clang of a hammer on a wedge. The quarry is a vast stepped wound in the side of a hill, a man-made canyon of raw stone. All around you, dozens of men are engaged in the same primal struggle. Your task is to help excavate massive blocks of limestone or sandstone, the building blocks for the new cathedral being constructed miles away, a project that began before you were born and will continue long after you're gone. Your toolset is simple and ancient: iron wedges, heavy sledgehammers, and long levers. There is no dynamite, no power tools. There is only muscle, sweat, and a deep understanding of the stone's nature. You and your team identify a promising section of the rock face. You look for the grain, the natural lines of cleavage in the stone. A master quarryman can read the rock like a book, knowing just where to strike. You start by carving a line of deep grooves with a pickaxe, defining the block you want to break away. This is slow, jarring work, each strike of the pick sending a shockwave up your arms. Then, you hammer in the iron wedges one by one along the groove. You and your partner stand in a line, swinging your heavy sledgehammers in a steady, hypnotic rhythm. Clang, clang, clang. The sound echoes across the quarry, a percussive heartbeat of human effort. You have to strike in unison, with equal force. A misplaced blow could ruin the block or, worse, injure a fellow worker. The sweat pours off you, mixing with the white dust to form a gritty paste on your skin. You pause to drink from a water skin, the water tasting faintly of stone. You look up at the rock face towering above you. Rockfalls are a constant, terrifying danger. The stone you're working to release can shift unexpectedly, and a block weighing several tons can crush a man in an instant. There are no hard hats, no safety harnesses. There is only a wary eye and a prayer. After hours of relentless pounding, you hear it. A deep groaning crack from within the stone. It's the sound of victory. You and your team grab the long wooden levers, jamming them into the widening crack and throwing all your weight against them. With a final shuddering tear, the massive block breaks free from the cliff face, crashing to the quarry floor with a boom that you feel in your chest. But your job is far from over. The rough block now needs to be squared, a process called scabbling. You use smaller hammers and chisels to knock off the roughest imperfections, shaping it into a more regular block that will be easier to transport and for the masons to work with. It's more precise than the brute force of the sledgehammer, but no less demanding. Your hands are a mess of calluses and cuts, your knuckles permanently swollen. One of the great historical achievements of the medieval period was the construction of the Gothic cathedrals, and it was your labour, here in the quarry, that made it all possible. This is a mainstream historical fact that is often overlooked. People marvel at the finished buildings, but rarely think of the thousands of anonymous men who spent their lives here, covered in dust to provide the raw material. As you work, you breathe in the dust, day after day, year after year. It settles deep in your lungs, a fine sediment that slowly turns them to stone. You see it in the older quarrymen who are constantly coughing, their breath coming in ragged, shallow gasps. They call it quarryman's disease. We now know it as silicosis, a fatal and incurable lung condition caused by inhaling crystalline silica dust. This is the quiet killer of your trade, more certain than any rockfall. A quirky and rather grim tidbit about quarry life is that communities of workers and their families often sprang up right at the quarry site. These were temporary rough and tumble settlements that existed solely to serve the project. Your whole world could be this dusty, noisy pit and the small collection of huts clinging to its edge. You were born, worked, and died within sight of the same hole in the ground. The squared blocks, still weighing many tons, are then loaded onto massive, specially built wagons, often pulled by a team of 20 or more oxen. Getting these blocks from the quarry to the building site was a monumental feat of logistics in itself, a slow, creaking procession along rudimentary roads. You watch the cart depart, a small piece of the hill you've spent your life dismantling, on its way to become part of something glorious and holy. Historians still argue about the labour structure in the quarries. Were the workers free labourers attracted by the wages, or were they a form of conscripted labour, perhaps serfs commanded to work by their lord who had donated the stone to the church? The reality was likely a mix of both, a complex system of skilled freemen working alongside conscripted muscle. As evening approaches, the foreman calls a halt. The rhythmic clanging of hammers fades, replaced by the weary sighs of exhausted men. You trudge back to your small hut, your body aching in a way that feels deeper than muscle. It's an ache in your very bones. You try to wash the dust from your face and hands, but you know it's inside you, a part of you now. You eat your dinner, the food tasting of grit, and you hack and cough, spitting a pale slurry into the fire. You look at your hands, rough and powerful from swinging the sledgehammer. They are the hands that are building a cathedral, a house of God meant to inspire awe for centuries. But you will never see it finished. You will only see the inside of this dusty, dangerous pit. You fall asleep to the ringing in your ears, the phantom echo of the hammer on steel, and dream of a world where you can take a single, deep, clean breath. The dust of the quarry finally settles as you follow the fruits of your labour. You've traded the raw, chaotic pit for the more orderly, yet infinitely more precarious world of the construction site. The massive stone block you helped hew from the earth has arrived at the bustling site of the new cathedral, and you have arrived with it, having secured a position as a mason's assistant. You're no longer tearing the world apart, you're now building it up piece by monumental piece. Your new workplace is a forest of wooden scaffolding, reaching dizzyingly towards the heavens. You've left the crushing risk of rockfalls behind, only to exchange it for the daily threat of a long fall onto hard, unforgiving ground. You're a castle mason, or in this case, a cathedral mason, and your job is to work high above the world, balanced on a network of swaying planks and ropes. Your day starts on the ground, in the mason's lodge. This is a long shed where the more skilled freemasons, the elite of your craft, do their finest work. They are the ones who take the rough blocks you want scabbled and, with a dizzying array of chisels, mallets and templates, shape them into intricate pieces of tracery, sculpted bosses and graceful arches. As an assistant, your job is to observe, to learn, and to do all the heavy lifting. You mix the mortar, a thick gritty paste of lime, sand and water. Remember the lime burner, whose job created toxic fumes. His product is now in your hands, a crucial ingredient for holding this entire magnificent structure together. You spend the morning hauling. You load finished stones onto a sledge, which is then hoisted upwards by a massive man-powered treadmill crane. This crane is a marvel of medieval engineering, a giant wooden wheel that men walk inside of like hamsters in a cage to provide the lifting power. It's grueling, monotonous work for the men inside, but it allows you to get stones weighing hundreds of pounds up to the working level. And then, it's your turn to go up. You climb the scaffolding, a creaking, groaning skeleton of timber lashed together with the rope. It's not bolted or welded, it's tied. You put your faith in the knots of a fellow worker. The higher you climb, the more the structure sways in the wind. The bustling ground below shrinks, the people becoming small, scurrying figures. There are no safety nets, no harnesses, no concept of OSHA. A single misstep, a moment of dizziness, a gust of wind at the wrong time, and your career in construction will come to an abrupt and terminal end. You reach the working level, a platform of planks perhaps 50, 100 or even 200 feet in the air. Here, the master masons are at work, setting the stones you sent up. Your job is to be their hands. You ferry buckets of mortar, position the heavy stones with crowbars and help guide them into place. The master mason taps the stone into its final position with a mallet, checking its alignment with a plumb line and a square. It's a job of incredible precision, performed in a terrifyingly imprecise environment. You stand on a plank no wider than your 2 feet, your back to an endless drop, and you pass a heavy tool to the mason beside you. You don't think about the height. You can't. You focus on the task, on the stone, on the mortar. You develop a cat-like sense of balance and an intimate familiarity with the feel of the wooden planks beneath your feet. A quirky fact about medieval construction is the existence of mason's marks. Each skilled mason had his own unique symbol, which he would carve into the stones he shaped. These weren't for vanity. They were a form of quality control. The paymaster could see who did what work, ensuring that shoddy craftsmanship could be traced back to its source. As you handle the stones, you see these marks. A cross, an arrow, a simple geometric shape. And you know the man who carved it, a fellow member of your travelling close-knit fraternity of builders. The sheer scale of the project is hard to comprehend. Mainstream historical fact, some of the great European cathedrals took over 200 years to complete. This means that you are working on a building that your grandfather might have started, and that your grandson might one day finish. You are a single link in a chain of generations, dedicating your life to a vision you will never see fully realised. There's a strange humility in that, a sense of being part of something vast and enduring. The work is dangerous, but there is a sense of pride and creation that was absent in the destructive toil of the quarry. You are not just a labourer, you are a builder. You are on the cutting edge of art and engineering. You're helping to construct a soaring vault, a testament to God's glory and man's ingenuity. The complex geometry of the Gothic style, the pointed arches, the ribbed vaults, the flying buttresses, was a major technological innovation, allowing for structures of unprecedented height and light. Historians still argue about how much architectural knowledge the average mason possessed. Were they simply following the orders and templates of a master architect, or did they have a deeper, more intuitive understanding of the structural forces at play? The truth is likely somewhere in between. While a single architect designed the overall structure, the master masons on site had to solve complex geometric problems every single day, using little more than a compass, a square, and their accumulated experience. The wind picks up, whistling through the half-finished arches. The scaffolding groans a little louder. A fellow worker a few feet away slips, his foot sliding off a wet plank. For a terrifying second, he dangles, his hands clutching the edge, his legs kicking over the abyss. You and another man grab his arms and haul him back to safety. Hearts pound, a few sharp words are exchanged, and then, without ceremony, you all go back to work. It's a near-daily occurrence. As the sun begins to set, casting long shadows from the rising walls, the foreman calls an end to the day. The slow, cautious descent begins. Reaching the solid ground feels like a victory every single time. Your legs are trembling, not just from the climb, but from the unconscious tension of keeping your balance for hours. You're exhausted, but it's a different exhaustion from the quarryman's. It's the fatigue of intense focus, of adrenaline, of having spent a day dancing on the edge of a precipice. You look up at the cathedral, silhouetted against the twilight sky, and you see the single stone you helped set today. It's a tiny part of a colossal whole, but it's your part, and tomorrow you will climb back up and add another. The high, clean air of the cathedral scaffolds has lost its appeal. The near misses and the constant gut-wrenching vertigo have sent you back down to the solid, if filthy, ground of the city. You're looking for a job that keeps your feet firmly planted on the cobblestones. You find one that not only keeps you on the ground, but sends you slinking through its darkest, most forgotten corners. You have become the town's rat catcher. Your official title might be Ruttener, and your role is far more critical than it sounds. You're not merely a pest controller, you're a frontline soldier in a never-ending war. Your enemy is cunning, relentless, and travels in teeming hordes, and it carries a weapon of unimaginable terror, disease. Your uniform is a collection of mismatched leather garments, thick enough to offer some protection from bites, and a wide-brimmed hat. Your tools are varied. You have a small but vicious-looking terrier, its body a bundle of coiled energy and aggression, who is your most valuable partner. You carry a bag of tricks, crude cage traps, sticky concoctions made of tar, and a pouch of arsenic-laced breadcrumbs for the truly desperate infestations. You also carry a long iron-tipped staff, useful for dispatching cornered quarry and for probing into dark holes. Your day doesn't follow a schedule. You go where the problem is. Today, it's the granary down by the docks. A merchant, his face tight with panic, leads you to his warehouse. The place should be silent, but it's not. There's a constant faint rustling and squeaking from within the walls and beneath the floorboards. The air smells of grain, but also of that distinct, musty, cloying odour of a large rodent population. The merchant points to sacks of flour, torn open, their contents spilled and fouled with droppings. This isn't just a nuisance, it's a direct threat to the town's food supply. You unleash your terrier. The dog needs no instruction. It darts into the warehouse, its nose to the ground, a blur of focused intent. You follow, your staff held ready. You set up a few traps near obvious holes, but your main job is to flush the enemy out. You use your staff to poke and prod at stacks of sacks, creating noise and disturbance. The first rat bursts from cover, a sleek brown shadow. Before it can get 5 feet, the terrier is on it with a savage shake of its head. The snap of the rat's neck is a sharp, clean sound. This is the grim reality of your work. It is a constant close-quarters battle. You move through the warehouse, a whirlwind of canine fury and human strategy. Rats boil out of the walls, and you bring your staff down with practiced economical movements. Thump, thump, thump. It's a messy, chaotic, and surprisingly adrenaline-fueled business. You are paid by the body. At the end of the job, you will lay out the dead rats in a line for the merchant to count. This system of piece-rate work is a historical fact for the profession. It incentivized thoroughness. A good rat catcher didn't just scare the rats away, he left behind a pile of evidence of his effectiveness. This also led to a rather gruesome, quirky tidbit. Some less than scrupulous rat catchers were known to breed rats themselves, releasing them into a new neighbourhood to guarantee future business. It was a dark and cynical form of job security. Your work takes you into every level of society, from the king's castle to the poorest slum. Rats are the great equalizer. You explore the hidden architecture of the city, the sewers, the forgotten cellars, the narrow spaces between buildings. You see the city's rotten core, the filth that people try to hide, the decay that provides the perfect breeding ground for your foe. But the real fear, the one that gnaws at the back of everyone's mind, isn't the rats themselves. It's the fleas they carry. You've heard the stories from traders and sailors, whispers of a great sickness in the east, a pestilence that travels along trade routes and leaves entire cities desolate. This is, of course, the Black Death, the bubonic plague. While the full pandemic hasn't yet reached its terrifying peak in your time, the connection between rats and disease is beginning to be understood, albeit imperfectly. People know that where rats thrive, sickness often follows. This makes your job both essential and terrifying. You're the city's primary, if unwitting, public health officer. You take precautions. You handle the dead rats as little as possible, using tongs to move them. You burn sulphur in infested areas, believing its pungent smoke purifies the air. You might even wear a pouch of sweet-smelling herbs around your neck, a pomander, to ward off the bad air or miasma that was believed to cause disease. These were primitive and largely ineffective measures, but they were all you had. Historians still argue about the effectiveness of medieval rat catchers in controlling the plague. While they certainly reduced the rodent population in localized areas, they were likely fighting a losing battle against an enemy whose biology and method of disease transmission were a complete mystery. Could they have inadvertently made things worse by disturbing flea-infested nests, causing the insects to seek new, human hosts? It's a chilling possibility. At the end of the day, you collect your earnings, your dog panting happily at your side, its work done. You're covered in dust, grime, and probably a spatter or two of rat blood. You are respected for the necessity of your work, but also viewed with a certain amount of revulsion. You deal in death and filth. You're familiar with the city's dark places. You walk home, the jingle of coins in your pouch a satisfying sound. But you can't shake the feeling of what you're up against. You've seen the sheer, overwhelming number of them. For every 100 you kill, 1,000 more are being born in the walls and sewers. It's a tide of vermin that can never truly be turned back. As you bar your own door for the night, you check your own small pantry, making sure it's secure. You know better than anyone what lurks in the shadows, what scratches and squeaks just beyond the limits of the firelight. You are the city's protector, but you are also the one who knows just how fragile that protection really is. You've spent your career battling the city's hidden enemies, the rats in the walls. But now you've taken on a role that forces you to confront a different kind of darkness, one that operates in the open, in the town square for all to see. You've become the executioner. Your work is not about pest control. It's about public order, divine justice, and the ultimate expression of the state's power. You don't live in the town proper. Your house is set apart, often near the gallows or outside the city gates. People don't want you as a neighbour. Your presence is a constant, uncomfortable reminder of sin and its consequences. You're one of the most essential and feared figures in the community. When you walk into the market, the crowd parts silently. The baker will sell you bread, but he won't meet your eye or touch your hand when you give him the coin. You're an outcast, tainted by the very justice you're required to dispense. This social ostracism is a well-documented historical fact for executioners across medieval Europe. Your job title is multifaceted. You might be called the headsman, the hangman, or simply the master of high justice. Your duties extend far beyond the final, fatal act. You're also responsible for carrying out non-lethal punishments. You administer floggings in the public square, your arm a steady practiced instrument of pain. You operate the pillory and the stocks, locking petty criminals into place to endure the jeers and rotten vegetables of the populace. You brand thieves and heretics with hot irons, the hiss of searing flesh, and the acrid smell of smoke becoming grimly familiar. Each of these acts is a public performance, a theatrical demonstration of what happens to those who break the law. Today, however, is a day for the high justice. A nobleman has been convicted of treason, and the sentence is death by beheading. This is considered a more honourable death than hanging, which is reserved for common criminals. The honour of the condemned, however, does little to lighten the burden on your soul. You spend the morning preparing your tools, not with malice, but with a craftsman's professionalism. You inspect the axe. It's a specialised tool, not a wood-chopping axe, but a broad-bladed, surprisingly heavy instrument, designed for one purpose. You run a whetstone along its edge, not because you enjoy the work, but because a sharp axe is a merciful axe. A clean cut is the difference between a swift end and a gruesome botched spectacle that will haunt both you and the crowd. Your reputation, and what little peace of mind you can find, depends on your proficiency. You also wear a specific uniform. Often it's a simple, dark tunic. But in some regions, executioners wore distinctive colours or masks. The mask, a common trope, was less about hiding your identity. Everyone knew who you were, and more about separating the man from the office. It was a piece of psychological theatre, helping to create a figure of impersonal, implacable justice. Today, you wear a simple black hood that covers your face. You walk to the scaffold in the main square. It's a newly built wooden platform, raw and smelling of pine. A crowd has already gathered, a sea of expectant faces. For them, this is a grim form of entertainment, a moral lesson, and a thrilling spectacle all in one. You ignore them, focusing on the task at hand. You check the stability of the block, a solid piece of wood worn smooth from previous uses. The condemned man is led through the crowd by the guards. He is pale but composed. A priest walks with him, murmuring prayers. The nobleman is allowed to speak his final words to the crowd, a tradition that serves as both a final confession and a warning to others. He speaks of his loyalty to the king, his voice clear and steady. Then he kneels. This is the moment where your world narrows to a single point. There is only you, the kneeling man, and the axe in your hands. You must be detached, a pure instrument of the law. But you are still a man. You see the fine hairs on the back of his neck, the tension in his shoulders. A quirky but vital part of your job was the brief final interaction with the condemned. Often they would tip you, pressing a coin into your hand and asking for a swift end. This blood money was one of the strange perks of your job, a final desperate plea for competence. You raise the axe. It feels heavy, a terrible weight. You have practiced this movement 1,000 times on dummies and animal carcasses. You know the exact arc, the precise point of impact. You take a breath, the crowd vanishes and you swing. The sound is a dull, wet thud. It's over in an instant. Your aim was true. Your work is not finished. You must display the head on a spike on the city gates, a gruesome warning to all who enter. Then, you have to clean the scaffold. This is part of the job that no one sees, the quiet, solitary work of washing away the evidence of what you've done. Historians still debate the psychology of the medieval executioner. Were they sadists who enjoyed their work, or were they ordinary men forced into a grim profession by birth or circumstance? The job was often hereditary, passed down from father to son, creating entire dynasties of executioners who were trapped in their social role. Many were also expected to have some anatomical knowledge, which led them into a strange side hustle, acting as informal healers or bone setters. People who would shun you in the street might secretly come to your door at night to have a dislocated shoulder fixed, believing that someone who knew how to take a body apart must also know how to put it back together. You go home to your isolated house, you take off the hood, the symbol of your office, and you are just a man again. But the taint of your job lingers. You earned good money today, far more than any labourer. Executioners were well compensated for their unpleasant work and social stigma. But the cost is high. You live in a world of ghosts. You see the faces of the men and women you've punished, whipped and killed. You are the final gear in the machine of justice, the hand that turns the theoretical power of the law into a bloody physical reality. You eat your dinner in silence, the quiet of your home a stark contrast to the roar of the crowd that, just hours before, had watched you take a man's life. The public spectacle of the executioner's work, as grim as it is, at least happens in the light of day. You have found your way into a role that is even more feared, more secretive, and arguably more psychologically damaging. You work for the same system of justice, but your stage is not the town square. It is a small, windowless room deep in the dungeons of the local lord's castle. You have become the torturer. Your title is never so blunt. You might be called the questioner or an examiner. Your purpose in the eyes of the law is not to inflict pain for its own sake. It is to extract the truth. In a legal system that places enormous weight on a confession, often considering it the queen of proofs, your role is paramount. Without a confession, a suspected heretic, traitor or conspirator might walk free. You are the key that unlocks the stubborn silence of the accused. Your workshop is a chamber of horrors, though you see it in purely functional terms. The stone walls are thick, muffling any sounds. The room is sparsely furnished. In the corner stands the rack, a wooden frame with rollers at each end, designed to stretch a body to its breaking point. Manacles and chains hang from the walls, their metal surfaces worn smooth by countless desperate hands. There is a brazier for heating irons, a collection of thumbscrews, and the menacing form of the strappado, a pulley system used to hoist a victim into the air by their bound-behind wrists. Each tool has a specific purpose, a specific level of pain it is designed to inflict. You are a craftsman of agony. Your knowledge is not of stone or leather, but of the human body's limits. You know how much pressure a joint can take before it dislocates. You know which areas are most sensitive to pain. You are, in a grotesque way, a student of anatomy, much like the executioner or the barber surgeon. You understand leverage, pressure points, and the delicate architecture of bone and sinew. Today, a suspected heretic is brought to your chamber. He is a quiet man, a weaver accused of holding unorthodox beliefs about the nature of the sacrament. He has refused to confess before the ecclesiastical court. The Inquisitor, a stern-faced cleric, instructs you to begin the questioning. The law, at least in theory, provides guidelines. Torture is meant to be applied in escalating stages. It is not supposed to be permanent, nor is it supposed to be fatal. A dead man cannot confess, after all. You begin with the psychological tools. You show the man your instruments, explaining in a calm, dispassionate voice what each one does. You describe the sensation of the strappado, the way the shoulders tear from their sockets. You explain the slow, crushing pressure of the boot, a vice used to break the bones in the foot and shin. This is often enough. The mere threat of pain can shatter a person's resolve. The weaver, however, remains silent, his face pale but his eyes defiant. The Inquisitor gives the nod. You are to proceed. You bind the man's hands behind his back and attach the rope for the strappado. You and your assistant turn the windlass, and the man is hoisted off the floor. His feet dangle a few inches from the stone, and the entire weight of his body pulls on his shoulder joints. The pain is immediate and excruciating. You let him hang there. The Inquisitor repeats his questions. Did you consort with others? Name them. Did you deny the transubstantiation? Confess! The man groans, sweat beading on his forehead, but he does not speak. The Inquisitor nods again. You release the catch on the windlass, and the man drops a foot or two before the rope jerks tight. The force of the drop, the squassation, is designed to dislocate the shoulders. A horrific strangled scream echoes in the chamber, a sound that the thick walls easily swallow. This is the grim reality of your job. You are the one who ties the ropes, turns the crank, and inflicts the pain. You must remain detached, a neutral functionary. To feel pity would make your job impossible. To feel pleasure would make you a monster. You exist in a strange, affectless middle ground, your face a blank mask of professionalism. A quirky and deeply cynical tidbit of the torturer's trade revolves around the legal loopholes. A confession obtained under torture was not technically admissible in court. The legal fiction was that the torture was merely a tool to persuade the accused to confess freely. So, after a session, the broken and sobbing prisoner would be taken back to the courtroom. The judge would then ask them, in the absence of any instruments of pain, if they would now like to confess of their own free will. If they did, the confession was considered voluntary. If they refused, they could legally be taken back to your chamber for more persuasion. This entire process is one of the most debated aspects of medieval jurisprudence. Historians still argue whether the authorities genuinely believed they were extracting truth, or if they understood that a person would say anything to make the pain stop. Was the goal justice or simply a confession, any confession, to close the case and make an example of someone? From your vantage point, seeing the glazed eyes of the man now hanging limp in the ropes, you suspect the latter. Finally, the weaver breaks. Through shuddering gasps, he confesses to everything the Inquisitor asks. He names names, other weavers, a baker, people he likely barely knew, implicating them in his supposed heresy. Your job is done. You lower the man, his arms now useless, and the guards drag him away. You have obtained the queen of proofs. The fact that the proof was born of agony and is likely a complete fabrication is not your concern. You followed your orders, you clean your tools, wiping them down, coiling your ropes. You're well paid for this work, and like the executioner, you're given a wide berth by the general populace, but your ostracism is even more profound because your work is secret. People don't know exactly what you do, but they can guess. They see you as a creature of the dungeon, a man who deals in screams and broken bodies. You leave the chamber and ascend the spiral stairs, emerging from the cold, damp darkness of the dungeon into the evening air. The world outside seems jarringly normal. Children are playing in the bailey, a cook is shouting in the kitchen. No one knows what just happened in the room below their feet. You carry the secrets of the castle's justice system in your head, and the phantom screams in your ears. Unlike the executioner, your work leaves no visible public mark, only the private, invisible scars on the bodies and souls of those who pass through your chamber. And perhaps on your own. You've had enough of the dark, hidden work of the dungeon. The silent screams and the cold stone have chilled you to the bone. You seek a profession that is not only public but respected. A trade that helps people, that brings relief instead of pain. You find your way to a bustling shop on a main street, a place marked by a red and white striped pole. You have become a barber surgeon, and you're about to discover that the line between helping and harming is terrifyingly fine. Your shop is a hub of neighbourhood activity. Men come in for a shave and a haircut, to have their beards trimmed, and to catch up on the local gossip. The air smells of soap, hair, and the faint coppery tang of blood. The red and white pole outside is a powerful symbol. The red represents blood, the white represents bandages. It's a proud advertisement of your dual trade, a historical fact that surprises many modern people. For centuries, the crafts of the barber and the surgeon were inextricably linked. One moment, you are leathering the face of a portly merchant, your sharp, straight razor gliding over his chin with practiced ease. You chat about the price of wool and the latest scandal at court. The next moment, a man stumbles into your shop, his leg crushed and bleeding from a cart accident. The gossip ceases. The atmosphere shifts from convivial to clinical in a heartbeat. You're no longer a barber, you're a surgeon. You help the injured man onto a sturdy wooden table, the same one you might use for laying out your towels. There are no anaesthetics, no sterile operating theatres. There is you, your tools, a bottle of strong wine, and your nerve. You pour a generous cup of the wine and press it into the man's hands, instructing him to drink it all. It won't kill the pain, but it might dull his senses and his memory of what's to come. You give another cup to his friend, who has been recruited on the spot to help hold him down. You examine the leg. The bone is shattered, protruding through the skin. The flesh is mangled and already turning a dark, unhealthy colour. You know from experience that there is no saving it. To leave it would mean infection, gangrene, and a slow, agonising death. The only option is amputation. You turn to your tool roll. It contains your razors, scissors, and combs, but it also contains saws, probes, and cauterizing irons. These are your instruments of healing. You select a small, sharp saw, its teeth clean but by no means sterile. The concept of germ theory is centuries away. The best you can do is wipe the blade on a relatively clean cloth. You take a deep breath. You have to work fast. Speed is the most important surgical skill. A prolonged procedure increases the chance of the patient dying from shock and blood loss. You take your sharpest knife and make the first incision, cutting through the skin and muscle above the wound. The man on the table screams, a raw animal sound that curdles the blood, but his friend holds him fast. You work with focused, grim determination, ignoring the screams, the thrashing, the smell of blood filling your small shop. You pick up the saw. This is the worst part. The sound of the saw on bone is unforgettable, a grating wet crunch that echoes in the small room. You saw quickly, your arm moving in a steady rhythm, sweat beading on your forehead. In less than a minute it's done. The lower leg is free. You toss it into a bucket, but the man is bleeding profusely from the stump. You grab the cauterizing iron, which your apprentice has been heating in the brazier, until it glows a dull red. You press the sizzling iron to the open wound. The man screams again, a sound muffled by the leather strap you've given him to bite down on. This smell of burning flesh is nauseating, but the bleeding stops. The heat has sealed the blood vessels. This brutal but effective technique is the only way you have to prevent him from bleeding to death on your table. You bandage the stump tightly with clean linen. The surgery is over. The entire procedure has taken less than 5 minutes. The man is pale and unconscious, whether from the wine, the pain, or a combination of both. He has survived the operation. Whether he survives the inevitable infection that will follow is another matter entirely. His chances are, at best, 50-50. This is the brutal reality of your profession. You're at the forefront of medieval medicine, but your toolkit is medieval. A quirky fringe tidbit is that barber surgeons also performed a wide range of other procedures. They were the dentists, pulling rotten teeth with pliers. They performed bloodletting, either with a lancet or with the leeches you remember from your earlier career. They even performed cataract surgery, a terrifying procedure that involved inserting a sharp needle into the eye to push the clouded lens out of the way. Historians still debate the formal separation of surgeons from physicians. The physicians were the university-trained elites who diagnosed illnesses based on the theory of humours and prescribed treatments. They considered surgery to be a messy manual craft beneath their dignity. You, the barber surgeon, were the hands-on practitioner who did the dirty work. There was a clear class and education divide, with physicians looking down on surgeons as mere tradesmen. After the patient is carried away, you must clean your shop. You sluice the blood-soaked floor with a bucket of water, the red swirling down the drain into the street. You wash your tools. The merchant who was waiting for his shave decided to come back another day. You end your day not with a sense of heroic accomplishment, but with a bone-deep weariness and the metallic taste of adrenaline in your mouth. You provided a service, the only one available. You gave a man a chance, however slim, to live. But the brutality of the process, the screams, the blood, the smell of burnt flesh, they linger. You're a healer, a respected member of your community. But your shop is a place of both tidy grooming and desperate, bloody battles for life, and you are the master of both. You wash your hands, but in your mind they never quite feel clean. You've seen enough blood and bone in the barber surgeon's shop to last a lifetime. The screams of patience have been replaced by a new ambition, one that glitters with the promise of glory, honour and a place in high society. You have managed to secure a position that is the first step on the ladder to knighthood, a dream for many a young man. You have become an arming squire, and you quickly learn that the path to chivalry is paved with endless, back-breaking and deeply unglamorous work. Your new home is a bustling castle, a self-contained world of stone, steel and strict hierarchy. You're assigned to a knight, Sir Robert, a veteran of several campaigns, a man whose moods are as unpredictable as the weather. Your life is no longer your own. You exist for one purpose, to serve him. From the moment you wake until the moment you collapse into your straw pallet in a shared dormitory, your day is a whirlwind of duties. You rise before dawn, your first task to see to your knight's horses. You muck out the stalls, curry the destrier, his massive warhorse, and the palfrey he uses for travel. These are not just animals. They are phenomenally expensive and crucial pieces of military hardware. A knight's status is tied to the quality of his mount. You check for injuries, polish the tack until it gleams, and ensure they are fed and watered before you even think of your own breakfast. After tending the horses, you attend to the knight himself. You wake Sir Robert, an act that requires a delicate judgment of his temperament, and help him dress. You serve him his morning meal, standing silently by the table, ready to refill his cup or fetch another piece of bread. You are his shadow, his personal assistant, his valet. You anticipate his needs before he is even aware of them. The majority of your day, however, is consumed by the maintenance of his arms and armour. This is where the arming part of your title comes from. A full suit of plate armour is a complex, articulated machine made of dozens of individual pieces. It is also prone to rust. Your most tedious and vital job is to keep it pristine. You sit for hours in the armoury, surrounded by the smell of oil and metal polish, painstakingly cleaning every single plate. You use sand, vinegar or fine brick dust mixed with oil to scrub away any hint of corrosion. You check every strap, every buckle, every rivet. A broken strap in battle could mean a fatal gap in his defence. His life is literally in your hands. Then there's the sword, the lance, the dagger. You spend hours at the grindstone sharpening his blades to a razor's edge. This is not the quick work of the executioner sharpening his axe. This is a meticulous process. A nick in the blade could cause it to shatter on impact. You practice constantly, your arms growing strong from the endless work. But your job is not just menial labour. It is also an apprenticeship in the art of war. In the afternoons you train. You learn to ride, to handle a lance, to fight with a sword and shield. You engage in mock battles or melees with the other squires, brutal affairs that use blunted weapons but still result in plenty of bruises and broken bones. You are constantly being tested, pushed to your limits. Sir Robert watches your progress, shouting insults and instructions in equal measure. One of the most important parts of your training is learning how to arm your knight. This is a complex ritual, a well-rehearsed dance. It's a mainstream historical fact that a knight could not put on his own armour. It required at least one, and preferably two, squires. You start with the padded gambeson, then the mail chaucers for the legs, then the plate sabatons for the feet, the greaves for the shins, the polins for the knees, and so on, working your way up the body. Each piece must be strapped and buckled in the correct order. The final piece is the helmet. When you lower the great helm over his head, Sir Robert is transformed from a man into a living weapon, an anonymous figure of steel, and you are the one who made it happen. Your duties extend to the battlefield itself. If Sir Robert goes to war, you go with him. You do not fight in the main line of battle, but you are right behind it in the heart of the chaos. Your job is to stay close to your knight, carrying his spare lances and shields. If he breaks a lance, you must provide another. If he is unhorsed, you must rush to his aid, protecting him from foot soldiers who would swarm a downed knight and helping him to his feet. A near impossible task given the weight of his armour. If he is wounded, you must drag him back from the fray. It is a job of immense danger, with none of the glory. A quirky tidbit about a squire's life revolves around the non-martial duties. You were also expected to learn the courtly arts. You had to learn how to carve meat properly at the high table, how to play chess, perhaps even how to compose poetry or play a lute. A knight was expected to be more than just a brute. He was supposed to be a cultured gentleman. You had to learn to be as adept at serving wine as you were at sharpening a sword. Historians still argue about the social mobility of squires. Was becoming a squire a guaranteed path to knighthood for a well-born boy, or was it a dead-end job for many? For the sons of nobles it was a clear stepping stone. But for a boy from a less privileged background who managed to become a squire, the path was much less certain. He might serve his entire life as a squire or become a man-at-arms, a professional soldier, without ever achieving the accolade, the ceremonial tap on the shoulder with a sword that made him a knight. You stand by at the jousting tournament, your heart pounding as Sir Robert charges his opponent. You watch him, your eyes scanning for any sign of trouble with his gear. His victory is your victory. His failure is your failure. You live and breathe his reputation. You endure his drunken moods, his rages, his moments of kindness. You are his servant, his student, and his keeper. You fall into your bed at night, every muscle aching, your mind a swirl of horses, armour, and the complex rules of chivalry. The work is relentless, the praise is rare, and the dangers are many. But you hold on to the dream that one day, after years of this gruelling service, Sir Robert will deem you worthy, that you will kneel before him, a humble squire, and rise as a knight, ready to have a squire of your own to command. It's a distant, glittering prize that makes all the toil and humiliation worthwhile. The path of the squire, with its glittering promise of knighthood, is a road few can travel. It requires birth, or at least a significant amount of luck and favour. Your path is different. It's muddier. You were born a yeoman, a free man of common stock, but you possess a skill that makes you more valuable than a dozen peasants with pitchforks, a skill that can break a cavalry charge and bring a nobleman crashing down into the mud. You are an archer, and your tool is the English longbow. You stand in a field in northern France, a place whose name you don't know and will likely never learn. It's been raining for days, and the ground has turned into a thick, clinging mire that sucks at your worn leather boots. You are one of thousands, a long, ragged line of men just like you, standing shoulder to shoulder. In front of you, planted in the soft earth, is a sharpened wooden stake angled towards the enemy. Behind you, the knights and men-at-arms are waiting, their armour gleaming even in the dim grey light. They are the hammer, you are the anvil, or maybe it's the other way round. Your bow is taller than you are. It's a magnificent piece of yew wood, carefully shaped and tillered, its belly and back working in perfect harmony. It is not an easy weapon to master. A mainstream historical fact that defines your existence is the bow's immense draw weight, which could range from 100 to over 180 pounds. For comparison, a modern hunting bow rarely exceeds 70 pounds. To draw this bow is a feat of incredible strength, a full body movement that engages your back, your shoulders, and your arms. You have been training with it since you were a boy, starting with smaller bows and gradually moving up. It's a lifetime commitment. Your body is a testament to this commitment. A quirky and fascinating tidbit confirmed by skeletons of longbowmen found on shipwrecks like the Mary Rose is that a life of archery physically deformed the skeleton. Your spine is likely twisted, your right shoulder and arm are visibly more muscular than your left, and you probably have bony spurs on your wrist and shoulder bones from the repetitive strain. You are a living testament to your craft, your body shaped by your weapon. It's like a lifetime subscription to a gym that only has one machine, and it only works out your right shoulder and back. Across the field, the enemy is assembling, a glittering, arrogant line of French knights, their horses prancing impatiently. They look down on you with contempt. You are a commoner, a peasant with a stick. They are nobles clad in steel, born to fight. They believe their charge will shatter your line in moments. They have not yet learned the lesson that your bow is designed to teach. The command comes, shouted down the line. Knock. You pull an arrow from the quiver at your belt, or more likely from the ground in front of you where you've stuck a few dozen for speed. It's a yard long, fletched with goose feathers, and tipped with a vicious-looking bodkin point, a narrow, hardened steel tip designed specifically to punch through mail and plate armour. You fit the knock to the waxed bowstring. Draw. You place your feet, hook your first 3 fingers onto the string and pull. It is a massive effort. The yew-wood groans as you pull the string back to your ear, your entire body straining with the force. You are holding back a furious amount of potential energy. Loose. You release your fingers. With a deep, resonant thrum that you feel in your bones, the bow leaps in your hand and the arrow is gone. You don't watch it fly. You're already reaching for another. You're not firing a few carefully aimed shots like a movie hero. You are a human machine gun, and your only setting is brrr. Your job is to put as many arrows into the air as quickly as possible. A trained longbowman could fire 10 to 12 arrows a minute. Multiply that by several thousand archers, and the sky itself turns dark. The first volley is a thing of terrible beauty. A great whistling cloud of arrows ascends, hangs for a moment at its apex, and then plunges down into the French line. You hear the sound a moment later, a horrifying drumming, as thousands of arrows rain down on steel armour, horseflesh, and men. It's followed by a sound of chaos. The screams of wounded horses, the shouts of men, the clang of knights falling from their saddles. This is your power. At battles like Crécy and Agincourt, it was this deadly rain that decimated the flower of French chivalry. Your arrows, fired in high-arsing volleys, could strike with enough force to penetrate the top of a knight's helmet or the weaker armour on his horse. The French charge begins, a thunderous wave of steel and horse, but they are charging into a quagmire, their heavy horses struggling in the mud, and all the while your volleys continue to fall. Knock, draw, loose. Knock, draw, loose. Your fingers are raw, your back is screaming, but you don't stop. The air is filled with the constant hiss of your arrows, a sound that became known as the Song of the Bow. Historians still argue about whether the archer was a respected professional soldier or just a marginally more valuable form of peasant infantry. You were paid, and paid relatively well for a common soldier, several pence a day. But you were also utterly disposable. If the line broke, you had little armour and would be cut down in moments by the vengeful knights. You win the battle for the nobles, but they are the ones who will get rich from ransoming the highborn captives. You might get a few coins or the chance to loot a corpse if you're lucky. The charge falters, broken by the mud and the relentless storm of arrows. The field before you is a writhing, screaming mass of fallen men and horses. Now the English knights advance, moving in on foot to finish the job. Your part for the moment is over. You lean on your bow, your body trembling with exhaustion and adrenaline. Your shoulders burn, your fingers are numb and bleeding. You survived. You look out at the carnage you helped create, the proud knights laid low by you and your yew-stave. There is no glory for you, no songs will be sung of your deeds, but as you retrieve your remaining arrows and wipe the mud from your bow, there is a grim, quiet satisfaction. You, the common man, held the power of life and death in your hands today. And the whole world shook. The battlefield is a place of visceral, close-quarters chaos. You, the longbowman, have seen firsthand what a well-placed arrow can do, but now your role in warfare has shifted. You have moved from the frantic energy of the battle line to a position of calculated, almost scientific destruction. You're no longer firing an arrow a second. You're preparing to hurl a dead horse over a castle wall. You have become a trebuchet engineer. Your new workplace is the siege camp, a sprawling temporary city of tents, forges and nervous energy, all situated just outside the effective range of the castle's archers. The castle looms before you, a stone behemoth, its walls thick and defiant. Direct assault would be suicidal. Starving them out could take months, even years. Your job is to make them surrender. Your tool is the largest, most terrifying piece of artillery in the medieval world, the trebuchet. It is a monster of wood and iron, a testament to the brutal genius of siege warfare. You look up at the machine you and your team have spent weeks assembling. Its primary feature is a massive rotating arm, or beam, sometimes over 50 feet long, pivoting on a high axle. On one end of the arm is a sling for the projectile, on the other, a colossal counterweight box filled with tons of earth, stone and lead. This is not a catapult which uses tension. This is a gravity engine. It is pure, brutal physics. As the master engineer, you are part carpenter, part physicist, and part artist. You are one of the most highly skilled and highly paid individuals in the entire army, a freelance specialist hired for your rare and valuable knowledge. Your mind is filled with calculations the average soldier cannot comprehend. You understand leverage, trajectory, and the tensile strength of wood and rope. Your day begins with an inspection of the great machine. You check the axle for stress fractures. You examine the massive ropes of the sling. You supervise the team of labourers who are using a winch to slowly raise the long arm, lifting the incredibly heavy counterweight box into the air. The creaking and groaning of the timbers under strain is the sound of immense potential energy being stored. It's a tense, dangerous process. A snapped rope or a splintering beam could kill a man instantly. The army's commander, a grim-faced lord, comes to you with his request. He wants to demoralise the castle's defenders. He doesn't want to batter the walls just yet. He wants to send a message. Your ammunition for this task is not the neat, round stones you sometimes use. It's the carcass of a horse that died of disease yesterday. This is a well-documented and terrifying aspect of medieval siegecraft, a primitive form of biological warfare. You direct your team to haul the bloated carcass to the trebuchet. The stench is appalling, a gag-inducing miasma of decay. You load the heavy, unwieldy body into the sling, a disgusting and difficult task. Now comes the art of your profession. You need to calculate the shot. You eye the distance to the castle walls. You lick a finger and hold it up, judging the wind. You confer with your assistants, making small adjustments to the length of the sling and the position of the machine. Firing a trebuchet was not a simple point-and-shoot affair. It required immense skill and experience to achieve any degree of accuracy. Historians still argue about how precise these machines could truly be. While some accounts tell of engineers who could repeatedly hit the same spot on a wall, many shots likely went wild, making each successful hit a cause for celebration. A quirky but deadly tidbit of the trade was the practice of duelling trebuchets. If the besieged castle had its own siege engines, they would try to destroy yours before you could destroy them. This meant you were working under the constant threat of a multi-hundred-pound rock suddenly falling out of the sky and smashing you and your beautiful machine to splinters. Your position was a high-priority target. Everything is ready. The arm is cocked. The grotesque projectile is loaded. The camp falls silent as soldiers gather to watch. This is high drama. You shout the command to stand clear. Then, with a mallet, you strike the release pin. The result is instantaneous and apocalyptic. The massive counterweight drops with a deafening roar. The long arm whips upwards with incredible speed, a blur of motion. The sling arcs around, and at the perfect moment, one end slips free, releasing the projectile. The horse carcass, tumbling end over end, is flung high into the air. It soars in a graceful, sickening parabola, a dark shape against the grey sky. For a moment it seems to hang at its apex, directly over the castle. Then it plunges down, disappearing behind the battlements. A moment later, a collective shout of horror is heard from within the castle. Your aim was true. You have just delivered a package of pestilence and terror directly into their courtyard. The psychological impact is as important as the physical. The defenders now have to deal with a rotting, disease-ridden carcass in the middle of their home. It's a message of utter contempt. Your work continues. The next shot might be a huge stone to batter the gatehouse, or it might be a bundle of burning straw and pitch to start fires within the walls. Sometimes, You even launch the heads of captured messengers back over the walls. Your ammunition is limited only by the commander's imagination and cruelty. You're a long-distance dealer of death and misery. At night, you sit by the fire, sketching designs in the dirt, thinking about how to get a little more range, a little more accuracy. You are a respected master of your craft, but it is a grim one. You don't see the faces of your victims. Your work is impersonal, a matter of angles and weights. You are a harbinger of destruction, a man who can tear down in an hour what took masons years to build. And as the siege drags on, you know that the fate of everyone, both inside and outside the castle, rests on the creaking arm of your terrible machine. The calculated destruction of the trebuchet with its high-level physics and engineering feels a world away from your new reality. You have left the open air of the siege camp for a different kind of darkness, a subterranean world far more claustrophobic than any dungeon. You have traded the sky for a ceiling of solid rock. You have become a miner, descending deep into the earth to claw out the raw materials that fuel the medieval economy. Your world is one of perpetual twilight. You start your day by gathering at the mouth of the mineshaft, a dark, ominous hole in the ground. The air that breathes out of it is cool and smells of damp stone and something else, something acrid and metallic. You light the tallow candle fixed to the front of your leather cap or simply carry a small sputtering lamp. This meagre flame is your only sun for the next 12 hours. The descent is terrifying. There are no elevators, no safety cages. You climb down a series of rickety wooden ladders, one after another, into the blackness. The shaft is narrow, and you can feel the cold rock brushing against your back and shoulders. The only sounds are the dripping of water, the scuff of your boots on the rungs, and the nervous breathing of the men above and below you. You descend for hundreds of feet, far deeper than any castle dungeon, into the bowels of the earth. You finally reach the working level, a cramped network of tunnels branching off from the main shaft. The tunnels are not the tall, vaulted corridors you see in fantasy movies. They are tiny, often no more than 3 or 4 feet high. You cannot stand up. You spend your entire workday crouched, kneeling, or lying on your side. This is your office. Your job is to dig. You're searching for a vein of tin or coal or iron ore. Your primary tool is a pickaxe, along with wedges and a shovel. You attack the rock face in the cramped, flickering darkness. The work is punishingly hard, each swing of the pick jarring your entire body. The sound of your striking, multiplied by dozens of other miners in nearby tunnels, creates a constant, muffled cacophony. The air is thin and foul. The candles and lamps consume what little oxygen there is, and the tunnels fill with smoke and the dust from the rock. Breathing is a conscious effort. But the lack of good air is not the only invisible danger. The tunnels can fill with what miners call damps. Fire damp, methane, is an explosive gas that can be ignited by a single spark from a pickaxe striking rock or an open flame lamp, resulting in a cataclysmic explosion. Choke damp, carbon dioxide or other suffocating gases, is an invisible killer that can silently extinguish your candle, and then you. Canaries in cages were a much later invention. Your best early warning system is the sputtering of your own flame. Then there is the water. You're working far below the water table, and groundwater constantly seeps into the tunnels. You're perpetually cold and wet. A significant part of the mining operation involves drainage. Bailing crews, often employing children for their small size, work constantly to haul up buckets of water, a never-ending battle to keep the lower levels from flooding. And of course, there is the ever-present threat of a cave-in. The tunnels are held up by timber supports, massive wooden beams wedged into place, but these were often hastily constructed and could rot in the damp conditions. A creaking timber is the most terrifying sound in the mine. You learn to listen to the sounds of the earth, to distinguish the normal groans of settling rock from the sharp crack that signals an imminent collapse. To be trapped in a collapsed tunnel is a fate too horrible to contemplate, a slow death in absolute darkness. A fascinating and quirky historical tidbit about mining folklore is the belief in knockers or goblins. These were mythical creatures said to inhabit the mines. Miners would often leave a small portion of their food as an offering to them. The sound of the knockers, often just the natural creaking of the rock, could be interpreted as either a warning of an impending collapse or a sign that they were leading you towards a rich vein of ore. This folklore was a way of coping with the immense, unpredictable dangers of the underground world. The fruits of your labour, the ore or coal, are loaded into baskets or small carts and hauled back to the main shaft to be lifted to the surface. It is back-breaking work made harder by the cramped conditions. You're not just a digger, you're a human mule. The division of labour in mines is a subject historians continue to explore. Was it a community effort, with miners sharing in the profits, or was it a more hierarchical system controlled by a wealthy owner who simply paid wages? In many cases, like the tin mines of Cornwall, a system of tributors was used. Miners would work a specific section and pay a percentage of their findings to the lord or owner, keeping the rest. This incentivized finding rich veins, but also meant your income was dangerously unpredictable. After a grueling shift that feels like an eternity, the call comes to ascend. You make the long, slow climb back up the ladders, your muscles screaming in protest. As you near the top, you see it. A circle of daylight, so brilliant it hurts your eyes. You emerge from the darkness, blinking into the late afternoon sun, a creature returning from another world. You're caked in mud and rock dust, your face pale from the lack of sunlight. You receive your pay, or your share of the day's findings. It's enough to live on, a dangerous but honest wage. You look back at the dark mouth of the mine. You have survived another day. You have faced the darkness, the bad air, the threat of collapse, and you have won. But you know that tomorrow you must descend again. You're a man who makes his living by burrowing into the earth, risking everything for the valuable rock that lies hidden in the suffocating blackness deep below. The deep, dark claustrophobia of the mine is a terror you're keen to leave behind. You crave the open air, a wide sky, and a job that doesn't involve the constant threat of being buried alive. You find work in a coastal town or near an inland brine spring, in an industry that produces one of the most vital commodities of the medieval world. It's a substance so valuable it was sometimes used as currency, the origin of the word salary. You have become a salt worker, and you're about to learn that some poisons don't come from underground gases, but from the very air you breathe. Your new workplace is a sprawling operation of sheds, furnaces, and enormous shallow pans. It's called a saltern. The air is thick with steam and smoke, and a salty crust coats every surface, making the ground crunch under your feet. The process is simple in theory, but brutal in practice. You're going to make salt by evaporating water. If you're on the coast, your day begins at high tide. You and your fellow workers open sluice gates to flood large, shallow ponds, or salt marshes, with seawater. You then close the gates, trapping the water. The sun does the first part of the work, slowly evaporating some of the water over days or weeks, creating a more concentrated brine. This part of the job is tidal and seasonal, a constant dance with the ocean. But the real work, the part that grinds you down, happens in the boiling houses. The concentrated brine, or the naturally occurring brine from an inland spring, is transported to your station. Your world is now dominated by a massive rectangular iron or lead pan, perhaps 20 feet long and 10 feet wide, resting over a long furnace. Your job is to keep that furnace fed and to manage the boiling brine. You're a human bellows. All day long you haul fuel to the furnace. If you're lucky, it's firewood. More likely it's coal, the same stuff your mining brethren were risking their lives to dig up. The heat is immense, a physical presence that blasts you in the face every time you open the furnace door. The air shimmers, and sweat pours from your body, soaking your tunic almost instantly. Dehydration is a constant danger. The brine in the pan above the fire comes to a furious rolling boil. A thick, salty steam fills the shed, so dense it's like a fog. This steam is not just water. It carries fine salt particles and far more dangerously toxins from the fuel you're burning. If you're using coal, the smoke is thick with sulfur and other noxious chemicals. You breathe this corrosive, chemical-laden steam all day long. It rasps in your throat and burns your lungs. Your job is to tend the boiling liquid. As the water evaporates, impurities and sand sink to the bottom. You use a long-handled rake, or scratcher, to scrape these impurities out, a process called raking the pan. It's hot, heavy work, leaning over the roiling, superheated liquid. A splash of boiling brine can cause a horrific burn. As the brine becomes more and more saturated, the salt begins to crystallize on the surface. You use a skimmer, a shallow tool like a perforated shovel, to carefully lift the delicate salt crystals from the pan. This is a skilled part of the job. The size and quality of the salt crystals depend on the temperature of the boil and the skill of the salt maker. You work in a blur of motion, stoke the fire, rake the pan, skim the salt, repeat. The salt you harvest is piled up to drain, forming small white mountains. It is then dried further in a separate heated room before being packed into barrels for transport. This final product is white gold. It is the only reliable food preservative of the age. It is used to cure meat and fish, allowing communities to survive the winter and armies to campaign far from home. A mainstream historical fact is that control over salt production and salt trade routes was a major source of wealth and political power for lords and entire regions. Salt taxes were a reliable and often hated source of government income. But you, the worker at the source, see little of that wealth. You earn a wage, but you pay for it with your health. The constant exposure to the heat, the steam, and the chemical fumes takes a terrible toll. Salt workers were known to suffer from a host of respiratory ailments. The corrosive steam damaged their lungs, leading to chronic coughs and what was likely a high rate of industrial lung disease. A quirky and rather miserable tidbit about the job is the effect on your body. The salt-saturated air chapped your skin, making it raw and sore. It got into every cut and scrape, causing a constant agonizing stinging. Your clothes, your hair, your very skin became impregnated with salt. You were perpetually pickled. Even your sense of taste was likely altered, with everything tasting faintly of your work. Historians still debate the specific health impacts and life expectancy of salt workers compared to other labourers. While not as immediately perilous as being a mason on a high scaffold, the long-term cumulative damage was just as deadly. It was a slow-motion version of the quarryman's dust-filled lungs. You weren't risking a sudden, violent end, but a slow, painful one. At the end of your long shift, you stumble out of the boiling house, your ears ringing, your throat raw, your skin burning. The cool evening air is a shocking relief. You're caked in a mixture of salt, sweat, and coal dust. You try to drink enough water to rehydrate, but you feel perpetually thirsty. You look at the barrels of clean white salt ready for market. It's a product that sustains life, that enables exploration and commerce. But the process of creating it is a process of destruction, destroying fuel, boiling away water, and slowly, inexorably, destroying the bodies of the men who make it. You have escaped the darkness of the mine, but you have found a different kind of hell, one made of fire, steam, and the corrosive dust of the very substance the world can't live without. The relentless heat of the Sultan and the constant assault on your lungs have driven you to seek a quieter, more scholarly pursuit. You've found a position that requires no heavy lifting, no exposure to toxic fumes, and no risk of sudden, violent death. It seems like the safest, most comfortable job in the medieval world. You have become a scribe, and you're about to discover the unique and insidious ways that even the most peaceful profession can slowly and methodically destroy a man. Your new workplace is the scriptorium of a monastery. It is one of the quietest places on earth. The only sounds are the gentle scratch of a quill on parchment, the soft rustle of a turning page, and the occasional cough. You work at a small slanted wooden desk, known as a carrel, often situated by a window to catch as much natural light as possible. The rule of the scriptorium is silence. All communication is done through a complex system of hand gestures. Your job is to copy books. In an age before the printing press, every single book is a handmade object, a work of art, and a vessel of priceless knowledge. You're a human photocopier, tasked with creating a perfect letter-by-letter duplicate of an existing text. The book you are currently copying is a psalter, a collection of psalms, its pages filled with dense black Latin script. Your day is rigidly structured by the monastic hours, the canonical hours that call the monks to prayer 7 times a day. You work in the long stretches between these services, from dawn until dusk. The work is incredibly slow and demands absolute concentration. You dip your quill, carefully trimmed from a goose feather, into a small pot of ink. The ink is made from oak galls and iron salts, a dark, permanent concoction. You form each letter with meticulous care, your eye flicking back and forth between the master copy and your own, ensuring every stroke, every abbreviation is perfect. A single mistake could alter the meaning of a sacred text, and might have to be painstakingly scraped away with a sharp knife. The physical toll of this sedentary work begins to make itself known. You are hunched over your desk for hours on end, your spine curved into a permanent question mark. A dull ache settles in your lower back, a pain that will become your constant companion for the rest of your life. Your shoulders and neck are knotted with tension. Scribes often complained of a host of physical ailments, which one 11th century scribe famously summarized as, "It extinguishes the light from the eyes, it bends the back, it crushes the viscera and the ribs." Your most valuable asset and the one most at risk is your eyesight. You work by the natural light of the window, which is often dim and grey. On overcast days or as dusk begins to fall, you strain to see the fine lines of the letters. The use of candles was often forbidden in scriptoriums, a mainstream historical fact, because of the immense fire risk to the priceless library. An entire monastery's collection of books, the work of centuries, could be destroyed by one careless flame. So you work in the failing light until you simply cannot see anymore, your eyes burning and watering with the effort. Slowly, inexorably, your vision begins to blur. The sharp, crisp letters of your youth become a fuzzy, indistinct haze. Many scribes ended their lives in near blindness, their most vital tool worn out by their craft. A quirky tidbit of the scribe's life can be found in the margins of the manuscripts they copied. In these spaces, far from the sacred text, scribes would often leave personal notes, complaints, and little drawings called marginalia. They would complain about the cold, the bad light, the poor quality of the parchment, or the tedium of the work. One famous inscription reads, "As the harbour is welcome to the sailor, so is the final line to the scribe." These little notes are a poignant, humanizing glimpse into the daily grind of their profession, a silent rebellion against the solemnity of their task. You too find yourself doodling a small grimacing face in the margin, a secret commentary on your aching back. The work is not just physically demanding, it's mentally exhausting. The sheer monotony of copying day after day, year after year, is a challenge in itself. To keep your mind from wandering, to maintain focus on the repetitive task, requires immense discipline. You're not necessarily reading for comprehension, you are focused on the shape and order of the letters. It's a strange, meditative state, but one that can be draining. Historians still debate the literacy rates and the role of lay scribes versus monastic ones. While monasteries were the great centres of book production for much of the Middle Ages, by the later period commercial scriptoriums were popping up in cities, employing professional lay scribes to copy legal documents, university texts, and popular romances. The job was slowly moving from a purely sacred calling to a secular trade. You finish a page. The Latin text is perfect, a neat block of black against the creamy white of the vellum. It is beautiful. You have created something that will likely outlive you by centuries. There is a profound sense of purpose in that, a connection to the past and the future. You are preserving knowledge, keeping the flame of learning alive in a dark world. Your work is the bedrock of civilization. But as you stand up to stretch, your back groans in protest. You rub your tired, burning eyes. You look at your fingers, permanently stained with ink. You have traded the sudden dangers of the physical world for a slow, quiet decay. The miner's lungs turned to stone. The salt workers were corroded by steam, and your body is being bent and blinded by the noble, silent, and surprisingly brutal act of writing. You have found what seems like the safest job in the world, only to realize that it has its own unique and inescapable price. The quiet, scholarly life of the scribe, with its creeping physical decay, has proven to be a prison of its own. You long for a job that's straightforward, physical and honest, a task with a clear beginning and a satisfyingly clean end. You find work down by the river, a place of constant activity, laughter and hard-won camaraderie. You have become a laundress, or a lavender, as you're known, and you're about to plunge your hands into the literal filth of the entire community. Your workplace is the riverbank, or a designated public washing area with stone basins fed by a stream. This is not a solitary job. You work alongside a dozen other women, a boisterous, gossiping and fiercely territorial community. The riverbank is their office, their social club, and their battlefield. The air is filled with the slap of wet cloth against stone, the rhythmic thud of wooden paddles, and the high-spirited chatter of your colleagues. Your day begins with a collection round. You trudge through the town with a large basket or a small cart, gathering dirty laundry from your clients, wealthy households, inns, and perhaps even the local monastery. The bundles are heavy and they stink. They are a cross-section of medieval life, sweat-soaked tunics, wine-stained tablecloths, bed linens bearing the evidence of sickness and romance, and the mud-caked clothes of travellers. You handle it all without flinching. Back at the river, the real work begins. You don't have scented detergents or washing machines. Your primary cleaning agents are river water, your own brute strength, and a powerfully caustic substance, lye. Lye is a strong alkali, typically made by leaching water through wood ash. It is an incredibly effective degreaser and stain remover, but it is also brutally harsh on human skin. This is the central, painful fact of your profession. You dump a pile of laundry into a large wooden tub, you add water and a measure of lye, creating a slick, soapy solution. Then you begin to stomp. Just like the Fuller you remember from another lifetime, you use your feet to agitate the clothes, pounding the dirt out of the heavy fabrics. The lye solution stings your feet and legs, and you pray you don't have any cuts or scrapes. For the more delicate or heavily stained items, you get down on your knees at the river's edge. You scrub the fabric against a rough washboard or simply a flat stone. Your knuckles are raw, your back aches from bending over, and your hands are constantly submerged in the cold, river water and the corrosive lye mixture. Your hands are the tools of your trade, and the trade is destroying them. The skin is red, chapped and cracked. In the winter, the pain is almost unbearable, your wet hands aching and splitting in the freezing air. The most stubborn stains require another tool, a wooden paddle called a beetle. You lay the wet cloth on a flat stone and beat it rhythmically with the heavy paddle. Thwack, thwack, thwack. The sound echoes across the water. It's a full-body workout and your arms and shoulders burn with the effort. You are literally beating the filth out of the fabric. A quirky and somewhat unsavoury tidbit of the laundry trade is that, just like the fullers, you sometimes use stale urine as a bleaching and stain removing agent. The ammonia in the urine was particularly effective on white linens. So in addition to the lye, you might find yourself working with another of society's most unpleasant recycled products. Your job is a constant hands-on engagement with chemistry, even if you don't know the names for the reactions you're causing. After the washing and beating, you rinse the clothes in the flowing river water, a seemingly endless process of dipping and wringing the heavy waterlogged fabrics. Wringing is another feat of strength, twisting the cloth with all your might to expel as much water as possible. Your wrists and forearms develop a wiry strength. Historians still debate the social organisation and economic status of laundresses. They were often independent entrepreneurs, working for a fee, but their trade was at the very bottom of the social and economic ladder. It was hard, wet, and smelly work, performed almost exclusively by women, often widows or those without other means of support. Despite providing an essential service, cleanliness and hygiene, they were often looked down upon as coarse and disreputable. The riverbank washing place was seen by some as a hotbed of gossip and loose morals. Finally, the clean laundry has to be dried. You haul the heavy, damp bundles to a nearby meadow or common green and spread them out on the grass or drape them over bushes. You have to stand guard over it, protecting it from dirt, birds, and most importantly, thieves. A clean tunic was a valuable commodity. At the end of a long day, you gather the now dry, sun-bleached laundry. It smells of sunshine and clean linen, a scent that is deeply satisfying. You fold it neatly and deliver it back to your clients, collecting your hard-earned payment. Your body is screaming with fatigue. Your back is a knot of pain, and your hands are a raw, tender mess. You look at your own hands, the skin permanently damaged by the lye and the cold water, and you see the price of cleanliness. You've handled the literal dirty laundry of your entire town, transforming foul, stained cloth into something fresh and clean, through sheer force of will and a lot of pain. It's an honest, essential trade, but one that strips the skin from your hands and breaks your back, all for a few pence, and the simple, profound satisfaction of a clean shirt. The harsh, physical labour of the laundress has left your hands raw and your back aching. You seek a position within the sheltered walls of a noble household, a role that promises comfort, good food, and a life far removed from the grime of the common folk. You find such a position, one of the most intimate and trusted roles a woman could hold. You have become a wet nurse, and you're about to learn that the deepest sacrifices are not always of blood or sweat, but of your own flesh and blood. You live in the castle or manor house, a world of relative luxury. You wear fine linen, you eat from the Lord's kitchen, and you sleep in a warm bed. Your charge is the newborn son of the lady of the house. He is a precious, fragile creature, the heir to the family's name and fortune. Your one and only job is to be his mother. The lady of the house, though she has just given birth, does not breastfeed her own child. This is a common practice among the nobility, a mainstream historical fact driven by a mix of social and practical concerns. Breastfeeding was seen as a base, animalistic activity, unbefitting a high-born lady. More practically, it was known to act as a form of natural contraception, and the primary duty of a noble wife was to produce as many heirs as possible, as quickly as possible. So, the task of nursing the baby falls to you. You were chosen for this role with great care. You had to be healthy, young, and of good moral character. Most importantly, you had to have recently given birth yourself, so that your own body was producing milk. This is the heartbreaking core of your profession. In order to take this prestigious, well-paying job, you had to leave your own infant behind. Your own baby, perhaps only a few weeks old, has been sent to live with relatives in your home village, or, in a crueler but common practice, farmed out to another poorer wet nurse who will feed him with animal milk from a horn or, if he's lucky, her own breast alongside several other infants. The chances of your own child surviving are drastically reduced. This practice, known as sending to nurse, had a shockingly high infant mortality rate. You have traded your own child's health and future for the health and future of a nobleman's son. It is a silent, agonizing sacrifice that you carry in your heart every single day. Your life is now completely dedicated to the noble infant. You sleep in the nursery with him, your ear attuned to his every cry. You are the first person he sees when he wakes, the last voice he hears before he sleeps. You hold him, you rock him, you sing to him, and most importantly, you feed him. When he is hungry, you offer him your breast. He is a healthy, strong baby, and he latches on eagerly. As you nurse this child of another woman, your mind is filled with thoughts of your own baby. Is he hungry? Is he warm? Is he even still alive? The lady of the house visits the nursery occasionally, cooing over her son, admiring how healthy and plump he is becoming. She compliments you on your excellent milk. She sees you as a healthy vessel, a source of nourishment. She does not and cannot comprehend the emotional turmoil that lies beneath your placid, professional exterior. A quirky and medically fascinating tidbit of this profession revolves around the intense scrutiny of the wet nurse's diet and behaviour. It was believed that a nurse's qualities, both physical and moral, could be transmitted through her milk. This is a form of what is called humoral medicine. You're given a specific diet, rich in foods believed to produce good quality milk like bread, beef, and certain types of ale. You're forbidden from eating spicy or melancholic foods. You're also instructed to remain cheerful and avoid anger or sadness, as these negative emotions were thought to sour the milk and harm the child. Imagine the immense pressure of having to appear happy and serene while your own heart is breaking for your absent child. Historians still debate the emotional bond between the nurse and her charge. In many cases, a deep and lasting affection developed. You are this child's primary caregiver, the source of all his comfort and sustenance. He loves you as a mother, and you, despite your sorrow, grow to love him too. This could create complex and sometimes tense relationships later in life. The child, now grown, might feel a stronger bond with his nurse than with his own birth mother, leading to jealousy and social awkwardness within the noble family. The job lasts for as long as the child needs to be nursed, typically 1 to 2 years. Then your services are no longer required. You are paid handsomely for your work, given a bonus, and sent on your way. You leave the manor house, the place that has been your home, and the child that has been your life for the past 2 years. The parting is another wrenching emotional experience. You hurry back to your village, your pouch heavy with coins, your heart heavy with a mixture of dread and hope. You rush to the hut where you left your child, and then you discover your fate. Perhaps, if you are one of the lucky ones, you find a toddler who is thin but alive, who looks at you with the unfamiliar eyes of a stranger. You have to rebuild a relationship with your own child from scratch. Or perhaps, and this was the tragic reality for so many, you arrive to find that your baby died months ago from malnutrition or disease. Your sacrifice for the noble family has cost you everything. You have lived a life of comfort and privilege, but it was a gilded cage. You provided the most fundamental, life-giving service one human can give to another, but it came at an almost unbearable personal price. You are a mother for hire, your body and your emotions a commodity. in a world that valued a nobleman's heir far more than the child of a common woman. The quiet, hidden grief of the wet nurse is a burden you can no longer bear. You have fled the structured world of noble households and the bustling towns, seeking refuge in the remote, forgotten corners of the countryside. Here, in the small, isolated villages where old traditions die hard, you find a profession that is perhaps the strangest and most spiritually terrifying of all. You have become a sin-eater. Your role is not one of craftsmanship or service in the traditional sense. You're a specialist in the traffic of the human soul. You live on the absolute fringes of society, often in a dilapidated hut on the edge of the village, shunned and feared by the very people who depend on your terrible service. You're a walking embodiment of death and sin, a pariah who is only ever summoned in the most desperate of times. The call comes at dusk. A young boy, his face pale with fear, arrives at your door. His father has died suddenly without a priest to administer the last rites. The family is terrified that the father's soul, burdened by a lifetime of unconfessed sins, will be unable to enter heaven. It may be doomed to wander the earth as a restless ghost, or worse, be dragged down to hell. They need you. You gather the tools of your trade, which are shockingly simple: a wooden bowl, a crust of bread, and a mug of ale. You follow the boy back to the family's cottage. The air inside is thick with grief and the smell of death. The family of the deceased huddles in a corner, watching you with a mixture of fear and hope. They will not speak to you. They will not meet your eye. They shrink away as you pass, as if your very presence could contaminate them. The body of the dead man is laid out on a table in the centre of the room. A single candle flickers, casting long, dancing shadows. Your ritual begins. The family places the crust of bread on the chest of the corpse and fills your mug with ale. This is the crux of the transaction. You stand over the body, a silent, solemn figure. You're about to perform a supernatural act of transference. You're going to absorb all the sins of the dead man into your own soul. You pick up the bread from his chest. As you do so, you are symbolically taking the weight of his moral failings, his lies, his greed, his moments of anger, his secret shames, into the bread itself. You eat the bread slowly, deliberately. Each bite is a swallow of another man's life, his mistakes, his regrets. The family watches, their eyes wide with awe and terror. Then, you drink the ale, washing it all down, sealing the pact. In this moment, you have become a spiritual scapegoat. You have cleansed the soul of the deceased, allowing it to pass peacefully into the afterlife. You have taken his damnation upon yourself. Having consumed the meal, the ritual is complete. You have fulfilled your purpose. You turn and leave the cottage without a word. As you step out, a coin, usually a groat, is placed on the ground for you. This is your payment. It is considered deeply unlucky for them to hand it to you directly. You pick up the coin and melt back into the darkness, your own soul now heavier than it was before. The historical reality of sin-eaters is a fascinating and much debated topic. It is one of the most compelling pieces of folklore from the British Isles, particularly in Wales and the border regions. Historians still argue about how widespread the practice actually was. Was it a genuine, commonly practiced ritual, or a fringe belief that was exaggerated over time? The evidence is sparse, often coming from folklorists and antiquarians writing centuries later. However, the persistence of the legend suggests it reflects a deep-seated folk belief about death and the afterlife, a sort of pre-Christian spiritual insurance policy that operated outside the formal structures of the church. This brings up a quirky but critical point. Your job is deeply heretical. The church teaches that only a priest, through the sacrament of confession and absolution, can forgive sins. Your ritual is a form of folk magic, a direct challenge to ecclesiastical authority. If a priest were to find out about your activities, you could be accused of witchcraft or heresy, landing you in the very torture chamber you once worked in. You operate in the shadows, a necessary evil for the community, but a blasphemer in the eyes of God and his official representatives. You live a life of profound loneliness. You have no friends, no family. Children run from you in the street. You are the village's spiritual septic tank, a vessel for everyone else's filth. The weight of the sins you've consumed is a psychological burden that is hard to comprehend. Do you actually believe you are carrying the sins of hundreds of dead men and women? Or do you see yourself as simply performing a comforting ritual for grieving families? The answer is likely lost somewhere in the murky space between faith and survival. You return to your lonely hut, the coin you earned feeling cold in your hand. It is enough to buy you food for a few days. You sit in the darkness, the silence of your home a stark contrast to the emotional turmoil you've just witnessed and absorbed. You have brought peace to a family and, they believe, to a departed soul, but in doing so you have further cemented your own damnation, both in the eyes of the church and in the minds of your neighbours. You are a living ghost, a pariah who dines on death, forever trapped in a cycle of saving others by condemning yourself. The crushing spiritual solitude of the sin-eater, living on the edge of a society that both needs and reviles you, has become too much to bear. You crave a return to the centre of power, to a place of warmth, light, and laughter. You manage to find a role in the very heart of a great lord's hall, a position that requires a quick wit instead of a strong back, and a sharp tongue instead of a sharp blade. You have become the court jester. At first glance, this seemed like the best job yet. You wear a colourful, mismatched uniform, the traditional motley, complete with a floppy hat adorned with ringing bells. You carry a marotte, a mock sceptre with a carved head on it, which serves as your prop and alter ego. Your job is to entertain. You are the one bright spark of irreverence in a world choked by rigid etiquette and hierarchy. You perform during the long, boisterous dinners in the Great Hall. You juggle, you tumble, you play music, and you tell stories. But your most important skill, and your most dangerous one, is your wit. You're the only person in the entire court who is allowed to speak truth to power. This is the core of your function. You can mock the Lord, tease the visiting dignitaries, and make jokes about the latest political failures. In a world where an unguarded word could lead to imprisonment or execution, you're given a unique, almost sacred, license to be impertinent. You stand before the high table where your lord sits with his family and honoured guests. You make a joke about the questionable quality of the wine, and the whole hall roars with laughter. The lord himself chuckles, a rare and welcome sound. For a moment you are the most powerful person in the room. You have the ability to diffuse tension, to lighten a sombre mood, to make the powerful seem human. This role of the jester, as a truth-teller, is a well-documented historical fact. Figures like Will Somers, jester to King Henry VIII, were known to be trusted confidants who could deliver bad news or critical opinions that no courtier would dare to utter. But your position is a perpetual walk on a razor's edge. The line between a clever jest and a deadly insult is incredibly fine, and it is drawn entirely by the mood of your lord. A joke that was hilarious yesterday might be treasonous today. You must be a master psychologist, constantly reading the room, sensing the shifting tides of temper and ego. Your survival depends on your ability to know exactly how far you can push the boundaries. One evening, a visiting duke, a proud and humorless man, is the subject of one of your rhymes. The rhyme is clever, pointing out his well-known vanity. Your own court loves it, but the duke's face darkens. He does not laugh. Your lord, not wanting to offend his powerful guest, stops laughing too. The silence in the hall is suddenly deafening. Your bells, which seemed so cheerful a moment ago, now jingle with a mocking, terrifying sound. You have miscalculated. Your heart pounds in your chest. In this moment your life hangs by the thinnest of threads. A quirky and often misunderstood tidbit about jesters, or fools, is that many were not foolish at all. They were often highly intelligent, well-read, and politically astute individuals. The foolishness was a carefully constructed persona, a mask that allowed them to operate outside the normal rules of court. Some jesters were also physically disabled or had conditions like dwarfism, which placed them in a unique social category, set apart, and therefore paradoxically allowed a certain freedom. The term natural fool was used for those with cognitive disabilities who were believed to be protected by God and whose utterances were sometimes seen as a form of innocent divine truth. You, however, are an artificial fool, and your wit is entirely your own. You quickly try to recover, turning the joke on yourself with a display of exaggerated cowardice, begging the Duke's forgiveness in a high-pitched comical voice. It's a gamble. A moment of tense silence, and then your lord, perhaps deciding it's better to laugh than to start a diplomatic incident, lets out a booming chuckle. The court follows his lead. The Duke, seeing he is outnumbered, manages a tight, thin-lipped smile. The danger has passed, for now. Historians still debate the true extent of the jester's influence. Were they merely entertainers, a human lapdog for the amusement of the powerful? Or were they sophisticated political advisors, using the cloak of comedy to play a serious role in court affairs? The answer is likely that it varied dramatically depending on the individual jester and the ruler they served. For every powerful Will Summers, there were likely 100 anonymous tumblers whose careers ended abruptly after one bad joke. You're paid well for your services, not just in coin, but in food, lodging, and a certain degree of affection from the household. You're often a beloved, if not entirely respected, member of the court, but you are never truly one of them. You are property. A lord might give his jester to another lord as a gift. You have no real freedom, no agency beyond the limits of your lord's amusement. You go to your small room off the great hall, the laughter and applause still ringing in your ears. You take off the motley, the uniform of your precarious profession. The near miss with the Duke has left you shaken. You live by your wits, but your life is not in your own hands. It is a hostage to the whims of a powerful man. You are the funniest man in the castle, the life of the party, but you are also the most vulnerable. Every laugh you earn is a temporary reprieve, a stay of execution, until your next performance on the high wire of courtly humour. The constant nerve-shredding stress of the jester's life, where one bad joke could be your last, has worn you down. You've abandoned the false cheer of the great hall for a profession that is brutally, grimly honest. You've returned to the world of warfare, but you are not a soldier. You're not a knight, an archer, or an engineer. You follow the armies, but you arrive after the fighting is done. You're a battlefield scavenger, a picker of the dead. Your kind has many names, none of them flattering. You might be called a ghoul, a camp follower, or a carrion crow in human form. You exist in the grim aftermath of glory, your work beginning when the trumpets have faded and the last shouts of victory have died away. The battle is over. The field, which just hours ago was a stage for chivalric charges and desperate last stands, is now a silent, sprawling butcher's yard. The ground is littered with the dead and the dying, a grotesque tableau of men and horses twisted into unnatural shapes. The air is thick with the coppery smell of blood and the moans of the wounded. This is your harvest field. You move across the landscape of carnage, your eyes scanning the ground. You're not looking for survivors to help. You're looking for anything of value. Your tools are simple: a sturdy sack, a sharp knife, and a profound lack of sentimentality. You come across the body of a knight, his magnificent armour, which you remember another version of yourself polishing so diligently, is dented and muddy. He is your greatest prize. A full suit of plate armour is worth a fortune, more than you could earn in a decade of honest labour. But you cannot simply take it. You must work quickly and efficiently. You use your knife to cut the leather straps, removing the armour piece by piece, the helmet, the gauntlets, the breastplate. It is heavy, awkward work, made more difficult by the stiffness of the corpse. You work with a practiced, detached air, like a butcher dressing a carcass. You're not alone on this field. Dozens of others are engaged in the same grisly task. There is a hierarchy even here. The squires and servants of the victorious knights have the first pick, searching for their masters' captured opponents to hold for ransom. Then come the professional soldiers looking to supplement their pay. And then there is you, at the bottom of the food chain, picking over what is left. Competition is fierce and can be violent. A dispute over a valuable sword or a silk purse can easily end in a knife fight among the corpses. You strip the knight of his armour and his fine woolen tunic. You take the purse from his belt, its contents a welcome weight in your hand. You take the ring from his finger, a task that might require you to break the finger itself. Nothing is wasted. Even his teeth are valuable. A quirky and ghoulish historical tidbit is that scavenged human teeth were a primary source for making early dentures for the wealthy. Your work involves a constant, terrible triage. Many of the bodies on the field are not yet dead. You hear a man groaning, his leg shattered. He begs you for water. You have none to give, and even if you did, stopping to help would be a waste of precious time. You might, if you're feeling a sliver of mercy, use your knife to grant him a quick end. More likely you ignore him and move on. You cannot afford pity. It is a luxury that has no place in your world. The battlefield is not a hospital, it is a marketplace, and the currency is death. This gruesome work was an unofficial but essential part of the medieval military economy. A mainstream historical fact is that armies had very poor logistical support. soldiers were paid little and irregularly, and they were expected to live off the land and supplement their income through plunder. Scavenging the dead after a battle was not seen as a desecration, but as a pragmatic, if unpleasant, part of the spoils of war. You move on to the bodies of the common soldiers, the archers and men-at-arms. Their possessions are meagre but still worth taking. A pair of good leather boots, a steel helmet, a simple dagger. You pile it all into your sack. You're a walking collection of stolen lives, a mobile junk shop of tragedy. Historians still debate the role and identity of the most desperate scavengers. While many were soldiers or official camp followers, others were likely local peasants who saw the battlefield as a rare and horrific opportunity. For a poor farmer, the chance to find a few coins or a serviceable tool could be life-changing, worth the risk and the horror. As night begins to fall, a cold mist rolls across the field, shrouding the dead in a grey blanket. The work becomes more dangerous. Wolves and wild dogs, drawn by the scent of blood, begin to appear at the edges of the field, their eyes glowing in the dark. You must finish your work and get back to the relative safety of the camp. You shoulder your heavy sack, your back groaning under the weight of your grim profits. You have spent the day walking among the dead, your hands covered in the blood of strangers. You have profited from immense suffering. You return to the camp and find a merchant who specializes in second-hand arms and armor. You haggle over the price of the knight's harness, the merchant's eyes glinting as he assesses its quality. You sell your loot for a handful of silver, a fortune to you, but a pittance compared to the life it represents. You find a quiet corner, buy some bread and ale with your new wealth, and try not to think about how you earned it. You have navigated the ultimate free market, a place where everything is for sale and the price is paid in human lives. There is no honour in your work, no glory, only the cold, hard reality of survival in a world that is brutal, unforgiving, and, for you, grimly profitable. The grim profits of the battlefield scavenger feel like blood money in your hands. The ghosts of the dead follow you, and you yearn for a job that, while dangerous, serves a purpose greater than your own survival. You seek a role that involves movement, purpose, and the vital pulse of the kingdom. You become a messenger, a carrier of words that can start wars, seal treaties, or save a city. Your profession is one of perpetual motion and profound loneliness. You are entrusted with a sealed dispatch, a roll of parchment or vellum bearing the sigil of a powerful lord or even the king himself. Your instructions are simple. Deliver this to its destination as fast as you possibly can. The contents of the message are a mystery to you. You are a vessel, a human envelope, and your ignorance is your best protection. If you are captured, you cannot reveal what you do not know. Your only companion is your horse, a sturdy, unremarkable-looking animal chosen for endurance, not for beauty. You travel light, a bedroll, a water skin, a bag of dried meat and hard bread, and a simple sword or dagger that you hope you'll never have to use. Your true defence is not your weapon, but your speed and your anonymity. You set out at dawn, the castle gates closing behind you. The road ahead is long and fraught with peril. The concept of a safe policed highway system is a distant dream. The roads of medieval Europe are little more than muddy tracks, winding through dense forests, over desolate moors, and through treacherous mountain passes. Every league of your journey is a gamble. Your primary threat is from bandits and highwaymen. Forests are particularly dangerous, their thick canopies providing perfect cover for an ambush. You ride with a constant, heightened sense of awareness. Every snapped twig, every rustle in the undergrowth sets your heart pounding. You are a tempting target. While you may not look wealthy, a man riding alone with a sense of urgency is clearly on important business. An important business often means a valuable message or a reward for its delivery. You ride hard, pushing your horse to its limit, stopping only for brief rests to water and feed it. You eat in the saddle, your eyes constantly scanning the horizon. You avoid towns and inns where possible. A crowded tavern is a place for loose talk, a place where someone might notice your haste and ask questions you cannot answer. You prefer to sleep in a hidden thicket with your horse tethered nearby and your hand on your dagger. Sleep is light and fitful, a series of naps broken by the sounds of the night. A mainstream historical fact is the incredible speed these messengers could achieve. Despite the terrible road conditions, a dedicated messenger on a series of fresh horses could cover over 100 miles in a day. The Romans had a sophisticated relay system, the cursus publicus, and while the medieval system was less centralized, lords and kings maintained networks of stables and agents to facilitate rapid communication. Your journey might involve stopping at a designated monastery or a loyal manor to exchange your tired horse for a fresh one. The weather is another relentless adversary. You ride through driving rain that turns the road into a river of mud, through blinding snowstorms in the mountains, and under the oppressive heat of the summer sun. You have no shelter, no recourse but to press on. The message is everything. A quirky and rather grim tidbit of your trade is the variety of ways messages could be hidden. Sometimes, for extreme security, a message might be written in code on a small scrap of parchment, which was then sewn into the lining of your tunic or the sole of your boot. In the most desperate circumstances, you might be instructed to swallow the message if capture is imminent. Your body itself becomes the final layer of security. Historians still debate the reliability and security of these communication networks. How often did messages go missing? How often were messengers intercepted and the information used by an enemy? The fate of kingdoms could turn on the safe arrival of a single dispatch. A delayed message could mean a relief army arriving too late to save a besieged city. An intercepted message could reveal a king's entire battle plan. The stakes of your lonely ride are immeasurably high. After days of relentless travel, you spot the towers of your destination in the distance. A surge of relief and adrenaline washes over you. But the final leg of the journey can be the most dangerous, as you may be entering hostile territory. You might have to use your wits to talk your way past enemy patrols, perhaps posing as a simple merchant or a pilgrim. You finally arrive at the gates, exhausted, mud-spattered, and gaunt. You present your credentials to the guards, and you are rushed into the presence of the Lord. You hand over the sealed dispatch, your mission complete. You have no idea what news you've brought. You might have just delivered a declaration of war, a royal pardon, or the news of a birth. You're not paid until the message is safely delivered, so this moment is also your payday. You're given a hot meal, a fresh horse, and often another sealed dispatch to take back. There is little rest for you. You're a vital sinew in the body of the kingdom, a creature of the road. You have seen more of the country than any farmer or townsman. You have faced down danger and exhaustion. You're an unsung and anonymous hero. Your only monument the invisible thread of communication that you weave across a dangerous and fractured land. The endless, lonely roads of the messenger have worn down your spirit. The constant threat of ambush and the gnawing solitude have made you seek a stationary life, a trade where you can stay in one place and see the direct results of your labour. You find work on the outskirts of a town, near the quarries and construction sites. Your new job is essential to building the very castles and cathedrals you've spent your life navigating. You've become a lime burner, and you're about to step into a cloud of toxic, suffocating smoke. Your workplace is dominated by a kiln, a squat cylindrical tower of stone or brick, often built into the side of a hill. It is a simple but ferocious piece of technology. Inside it is a roaring inferno. Your job is to feed this beast and transform common limestone or chalk into quicklime, a key ingredient in mortar, plaster and fertilizer. The day begins with loading the kiln. You and your fellow workers haul baskets of limestone, the same rock the quarryman risked his life to extract, and dump it into the top of the kiln. You layer it carefully with fuel, wood or more often cheap dirty coal. This is heavy physical labour, performed under a sky that is perpetually hazy with smoke. Once the kiln is loaded, you light the fire at the bottom. The process of burning the lime has begun. This is not a quick or simple burn. The kiln must be kept at an extremely high temperature, around 900 degrees Celsius, or 1650 degrees Fahrenheit, for several days continuously. Your entire life now revolves around the relentless hunger of the fire. You work in long shifts, often around the clock. Your primary task is to stoke the furnace, constantly adding more fuel to maintain the intense, even heat. The heat radiating from the kiln is scorching, even from a distance. You're perpetually sweating, your face flushed, your clothes smelling of smoke and sulphur. But the heat is the least of your worries. The real danger is the smoke. As the limestone cooks, it undergoes a chemical reaction, releasing vast clouds of carbon dioxide. This gas is odourless, colourless, and deadly in high concentrations. More visibly, the coal you're using as fuel belches out thick, black, choking smoke, full of sulphur dioxide and other toxins. You live and breathe in this poisonous plume. The air you inhale is a corrosive cocktail that scours your lungs. A mainstream historical fact is that lime mortar was the concrete of the medieval world. Without the quicklime you produce the great cathedrals, the stone castles, the bridges, none of them could have been built. The stone shaped by the mason would be just a pile of rocks without the mortar you provide to bind them together. You are a crucial, if overlooked, part of the construction process. After several days, the burn is complete. The limestone has been transformed into the lumpy, crumbly substance known as quicklime, calcium oxide. The kiln is allowed to cool slightly, and then the most dangerous part of your job begins, raking out the lime. You open a hatch at the bottom of the kiln and use long iron rakes to pull out the glowing, intensely hot quicklime. The air is filled with a fine, white, caustic dust that is incredibly dangerous. This quicklime dust is a chemical menace. If it gets on your skin, it can cause severe burns, especially if your skin is damp with sweat. If you inhale it, it reacts with the moisture in your lungs to create a caustic substance that burns your respiratory tract from the inside out. If it gets in your eyes, it can cause permanent blindness. You wrap a cloth around your face, a primitive and largely ineffective mask, and pray the wind is blowing in the right direction. A quirky and terrifying tidbit about quicklime is its use as a weapon. In naval warfare, ships would sometimes hurl pots of powdered quicklime onto the enemy's deck. The cloud of caustic dust would blind and choke the opposing crew, creating chaos and confusion. The substance you are creating for construction is also a potent agent of chemical warfare. Historians still debate the life expectancy and health conditions of lime burners, but it's universally agreed that it was one of the most hazardous industrial occupations. The chronic inhalation of toxic fumes and caustic dust led to a host of fatal lung diseases, likely including silicosis, chemical pneumonitis, and cancers. Like the quarryman and the salt worker, you're sacrificing your body for your trade, a slow and agonizing process of internal decay. Once the quicklime is raked out and cooled, it must be slaked to turn it into the paste used for mortar. This involves carefully adding water. The reaction is violent and exothermic. The lime hisses, steams and boils, releasing enormous amounts of heat. It is a dramatic and dangerous transformation, and a miscalculation can lead to steam explosions or severe burns. You stand back from the hissing pits, your body aching, your lungs burning, your eyes watering from the smoke. You are covered in a fine layer of white dust that feels like a second corrosive skin. You look at the piles of finished lime, a substance that will hold a cathedral together for 1,000 years. You have mastered fire and stone, using ancient chemistry to create the very glue of civilization. But the process has taken a piece of you, coating your lungs with the same fine dust that will soon bind the walls of a distant castle. You have traded your breath for buildings. The toxic, choking plume of the lime kiln was the final straw. You have had enough of the world of physical toil, of jobs that break the body and poison the lungs. You have seen the futility of chasing wealth, the hollowness of seeking glory, the constant grinding struggle for simple survival. You have decided to flee, not just the job but the world itself. You seek a permanent, final and holy confinement. You have chosen to become an anchorite. This is not a job you apply for, it is a spiritual calling you are deemed worthy of. After years of demonstrating your piety and devotion, the bishop has granted your request. Your new workplace is a small stone cell, a room perhaps no bigger than 12 feet by 12 feet, built directly against the wall of the local church. It will be your home, your workplace and your tomb. The day of your enclosure is a public and solemn affair. The entire village gathers to watch. You are led in a procession to the church where the bishop himself conducts the service. It is not a ceremony of commencement, it is a funeral. The office of the dead is read over you, for you are about to die to the world. You are given your last rites. You are no longer a person, you are a living relic, a holy object. Then you are led to the door of your cell. You step inside, leaving the sun, the wind, and the faces of other people behind forever. The door is shut, and then you hear it. The scrape of the trowel, the clink of the hammer. Masons are walling you in, stone by stone. The last sliver of light from the doorway vanishes. The sound of the outside world becomes muffled, distant. You are now officially enclosed. The finality of the act is absolute. This is a job you can never quit. Your new world is stark and small. The furnishings are a simple straw pallet for a bed, a rough woolen blanket and a crucifix on the wall. There are 3 small openings. One is a narrow slit called a squint, angled through the church wall to give you a direct view of the high altar. Through this, you can observe the Mass, your only connection to the formal liturgy. Another window, covered by a curtain, opens to the outside world. This is where a servant will pass you your meagre daily meal, usually bread, water, and a few vegetables, and where devout villagers will come to seek your spiritual counsel. A third, smaller opening in the floor serves for the disposal of waste. The brutality of this life is not in its action, but in its stillness. All the previous jobs that have broken your body are gone. Here, your body will slowly waste away from sheer lack of use. Your muscles will atrophy. You will be perpetually cold, the damp of the stone seeping into your bones. But the true battle is psychological. You're utterly alone. The silence is a physical presence, broken only by the distant chant of the monks, the scuttling of a mouse, or the frantic beating of your own heart. The greatest occupational hazard here is akidia, a state of spiritual despair, a soul-crushing boredom and listlessness that the Desert Fathers called the noonday demon. A mainstream historical fact is that this was a recognised vocation, particularly for women, anchoresses, with famous examples like Julian of Norwich, who wrote her influential theological work, Revelations of Divine Love, from within her cell. You're not a hermit who wanders the wilderness. You're a fixed point of holiness, a spiritual anchor for the community. But even in this profound solitude, there is a surprising concession to companionship. A quirky tidbit from the Anchorites, a 13th century guide for anchoresses, is that you are allowed to keep a cat. Your cat is your only roommate, a small warm presence in the crushing loneliness, and a practical defence against the mice and rats that might otherwise try to share your meagre rations. Its quiet purr is the most comforting sound in the world. Your work is prayer. You follow a strict routine of devotions from dawn until deep into the night. You pray for the soul of your patron, for the village, for the king, for all of Christendom. You're a spiritual battery, a specialist whose focused devotion is believed to generate a powerful grace that benefits everyone. People come to your outer window, speaking to you through the black curtain. They confess their fears, their sins, their hopes. You are their direct line to God, a disembodied, holy voice offering wisdom and comfort. Historians still argue whether the anchoritic life was primarily a selfish pursuit of individual salvation or a profound act of communal service. From inside your cell, it feels like both. You're engaged in a heroic internal struggle for your own soul, but your very presence serves as a constant living reminder of faith for the world outside your walls. You have escaped all the brutal jobs of the medieval world, only to choose the most extreme of them all, a life sentence of solitary confinement embraced willingly. There is no physical toil, only the immense silent labour of the soul. There is no escape, only the final release of death, when they will break down the wall to retrieve your body, now a true and holy relic. You have found the ultimate brutal job, the one that requires you to give up not just your labour, but your entire life, your body, your very freedom, all for a glimpse of God through a narrow stone window. And so our long journey through the hardest lives of the past comes to a gentle close. We have walked in the footsteps of the serf and the scribe. We have felt the heat of the forge and the chill of the battlefield, and we have shared the solitude of the anchorite's cell. Now, let the echoes of the hammer on stone, the stench of the tannery, and the weight of the executioner's axe begin to soften and dissolve, fading like a distant memory into the quiet of the night. Leave that world of toil and turmoil behind. Feel the simple, profound comfort of your own bed, the quiet safety of your own room, where the only sounds are the gentle hum of a fan or the soft rustle of your own sheets. There is no lord to serve, no battle to fight, no terrible duty to perform. The struggles of that forgotten time are not yours to bear. Your only task now is to let go. Feel the soft weight of your blanket, a gentle anchor in the calm ocean of the present moment. Pay attention to the steady, easy rhythm of your own breathing, a quiet tide that carries you ever closer to the shores of sleep. Let each breath be a silent release of the day's tensions, a soft whisper that all is well. There are no more tasks to complete, no more hardships to endure, only rest now.